we're going to go ahead and start our formal session, and first thing I'm going to ask for is a motion to certify the closed session.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Second. Okay. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Lucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Abstain.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 10-0, you have certified the closed session, noting Mr. Tower's abstention and that Mr. Moss stepped out during a portion of the closed session.
Okay, and now I need,
I stepped out.
Okay.
I didn't. I think something else, sorry.
all righty. I need a motion to certify the minutes of the special session of July 21st, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Lucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, you have certified the closed session, the minutes of July 21st. I'm sorry.
Alrighty. It's my privilege right now to do a proclamation on a very special individual who has worked tirelessly for a number of decades to make Virginia Beach a greater and better city. And Mr. Ira Gola, can you come to the podium right out there? Okay, whereas Ira Agricola was born in Portsmouth, Virginia, and graduated from Virginia Commonwealth University in 1976 with a bachelor's degree in community services. And whereas the semester before he graduated from Virginia Commonwealth, Ira returned to Portsmouth to work in municipal government. And whereas in 1981, Ira began his career with the Chamber as the executive director in Portsmouth. And whereas when the 5 city chambers merged in 1984 to create the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce, Ira became the vice president to oversee the executive directors of each of the 5 divisions. And whereas Ira received a graduate level certificate from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute of Organizational Management at the University of Delaware after completion of a 6-year professional development course in 1989, and also a graduate of Lead Hampton Roads. And whereas Ira served as Executive Vice President of Governmental Affairs, where he championed issues for the business community, such as sustainable transportation funding and maintaining Virginia as a right-to-work state, while also remaining steadfast in his support for energy issues and such as offshore wind energy. Whereas he lobbied at the local level for the public-private partnership in the established Virginia Beach Town Center, was an integral part of the city's efforts in the BREC, and was one of the founders of the Patriotic Festival in the military celebration that honors our armed forces personnel and their families. Whereas after dedicating 39 years of loyal service to our community, the voice of business in Hampton Roads, Ira is retiring to enjoy his family cottage in the Outer Banks with his wife Belinda and his granddaughter Emma. He will also continue his work with the Patriotic Festival, serving as their chairman. Therefore, I, Robert M. Dyer, Mayor of Virginia Beach, do hereby recognize July 28, 2020, Ira Agricola Day.
Mayor and council, I'm deeply honored. I will always remember this night and this day, and I sincerely appreciate what each of you does each and every day in a leadership capacity here in Virginia Beach. And I'm not going away quickly. I'm going to continue to make the Patriotic Festival one of the top events on the Eastern Seaboard, and I look forward to your support in that endeavor. But it's been great. I would be remiss if I didn't mention real quickly that it was a real honor working with Bob Mathias all these years, particularly on several rounds of BRAC that nearly closed Oceana Naval Air Station, and that was a true honor to be able to work alongside with Bob on that and other issues over the years. So deep appreciation, and thank you very much.
And Ira, on behalf of a grateful city,
Thank you, sir.
thank you. You got it. Ira Agrigola will always be a true champion of the business community that makes Virginia Beach prosperous. Okay, Mr. Wood, the consent agenda?
You need to read the speaker.
Oh, okay. I want to remind everyone that the speaker, city council speaker policy that allows certain representatives of groups to speak for 10 minutes applies only to planning items. All other speakers, whether speaking individually or on behalf of a group, will have 3 minutes to speak. Speakers are reminded that comments during the formal portion of the meeting must be limited to the subject of the item that is being considered by the council at the time you are called. When speakers are called on each item, the clerk will call for those individuals who have signed up to speak. After those who have signed up to speak have spoken, the chair will ask if there are any other persons who wish to speak on the item at hand. Those speakers will be allowed to speak and will be asked to give their name, address, and telephone number for the clerk to record. We have several items with only one speaker signed up, as such, the city clerk will call the speaker and identify each item they have registered on. The speaker will have 3 minutes to comment on each item. Again, the speaker must limit his or her comments to the subject matter of the items they have signed up to address. Finally, I call upon all speakers and all persons in the chamber to be civil in their discussion and decorum. Whatever views you hold or wish to express, the City Council wants to hear from you and ensure that all viewpoints and all persons are respected. The best way to do this is for all of us to strive for civility and respect. Okay, Mr. Vice Mayor.
So you have items 3 and 4 are the only two that are going to be on consent. I think you have a speaker on
Yes.
those two.
Okay.
Barbara Messner has signed up on the consent items, ordinance resolutions 3 and 4. Ms. Messner?
Okay.
The first item is number 3, ordinance to grant a non-exclusive franchise agreement to Kitty Hawk Wind LLC regarding offshore wind energy projects.
Okay, good evening. Sorry. Offshore drilling. Okay,
No, it was item 3 and 4?
3 and 4, okay, thank you. Grant non-exclusive franchise to Kitty Hawk Wind LLC. This is always taking away public access, public streets and right-of-ways, which limits their rare access to drive and go to the beach and get in and out of their neighborhoods. And I just oppose, non-exclusive franchise because we don't really discuss this and there's not a lot of due process. Okay, and 4?
Yes, ma'am, the next item is number 4.
Okay. Again, temporary encroachments, city right-of-ways, Cape Henry Drive and Shore Drive, Virginia Pilot Association Land Trust, maintain existing metal fence, sliding metal gate, brick columns with lights, gate motor, electric handholds, and keypad on pole. A lot of people have access to create gated communities. Most of us rely on our police, and they're overworked. So I'm just opposed. Temporary usually means permanent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr.
Okay.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, move for approval under the consent agenda. Item E3, ordinance to grant a non-exclusive franchise agreement to Kitty Hawk Wind LLC, Ray install, maintain, and operate telecommunication facilities in the public streets and rights of way for offshore wind energy projects. Item 4, ordinance to authorize temporary encroachments into portions of the city's right-of-way known as Cape Henry Drive and Shore Drive, located adjacent to 3325 and 3329 Shore Drive by Virginia Pilot Association Land Trust, where they maintain an existing metal fence, lighting metal gate, brick columns with lights, gate motor, electric handholds, and keypad on pole. So moved, Mr. Mayor, and I'd also like to make a comment on that. This last item is not a gated residential community. It is Homeland Security upgrades based on the Virginia pilots, because they are directly involved in international commerce, and this is protecting their facility.
Second.
So moved.
Okay, we have second. Mr. Moss?
I regret that during the other session, I always fail to forget this name, but since it's energy offshore and the only thing is Dominion Energy Offshore, I will need to abstain on item number 3.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, you have approved the consent agenda as read by Vice Mayor Wood, noting Mr. Moss's abstention.
Okay, we'll go back to ordinances, resolutions. Number 1, the resolution, oh, yes.
I just want to state the purpose of
Oh,
my
sure.
abstention, if I could, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Like I said, the only offshore energy project is one by Dominion Energy, and I receive more than the threshold dividends from Dominion Energy, and therefore I have to abstain under the current state statute.
Okay,
Actually, there is another offshore. It's the North Carolina group, and it's Kitty Hawk, and it's Alvin Grid or Guard. That's this company.
Oh, I'm not knowing how all those things are interrelated, like the pipeline, I'm going to play it safe.
okay.
Just to let you know.
Okay, Madam Clerk? Or do we,
Yeah,
okay.
we're done. This next item,
Okay.
it's four, you have the 4.
Okay, with the resolution to oppose offshore drilling and seismic testing requested by council members Abbott, Berluci, Tower, and Wilson.
The first speaker is Barbara Messner. And after Ms. Messner is Jim Depp.
Okay. You said 1, offshore drilling?
That is correct.
Okay. This is requested by council members Abbott, Berluci, Tower, and Wilson, and 2 of them are candidates this year. Okay, yeah, the city council, if they cared about the environment, because most of the opposition is about the environment, we wouldn't be building walls of cement. The hotels and all these high-density projects that are causing flooding everywhere. And we wouldn't be using our swimming beaches for commercial venues year-round. So I think it's a little late to care about the environment when it's basically destroyed, and the ability for many of us to go to the beach and get parking and enjoy the ocean and hear seagulls and hear the ocean is restricted. Yeah, and a lot of this is subsidized. So anyway, that's it on that one. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jim Depp.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, City Council, thank you for a couple of minutes here. I'm Jim Deppie. I'm a retired Navy captain, and I'm a Lynn Haven River Now advocacy volunteer, and I also head up the Virginia Coastal Alliance. I want to thank you for your steadfast support in opposition of offshore drilling over the years. And I thank you for bringing this updated resolution to the table today because of the activity going on off of North and South Carolina with respect to BOEM moving forward possibly on seismic testing, which is a precursor to offshore drilling. Thanks as well to Lynn Haven River Now and Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the Virginia Coastal Alliance, and BayPAC for their ongoing and steadfast support in opposition. As a retired Navy captain, I can tell you that offshore drilling is absolutely compatible with operations in the Virginia Cape's operating areas. Air, surface, and subsurface access has to be unimpeded, and all of the aspects of offshore drilling would impede our ability of our naval forces, Air Force, Marine Corps to operate in those areas safely and at full power. And without the ability to train, my fear is the Navy would decide to go elsewhere. So that's why there's not many Navy facilities in the Gulf of Mexico. Offshore drilling is also harmful to our tourism economy, our fisheries, both recreational and commercial, and our precious marine and estuarine resources, which are really a wonderful asset for us. It supports they support our economy, and they attract a lot of people to this unique area where the bay, the ocean, and all these rivers come together. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay, let's see. Okay, Ms. Abbott or Mr. Bellucci, make it.
To approve?
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Okay, second. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Bellucci.
Well, I'd just like to take a moment just to acknowledge a few people, including Mr. Deppie, the folks from Lynn Haven River Now, as well as Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and as well as Laura Hubbard, who's an advocate for our environment and our coastal ecosystems, and a very powerful and good one. What this resolution does is reaffirm the commitment that the city of Virginia Beach has already made to oppose offshore drilling. And it's widely recognized that drilling offshore could not only hurt our environment, but could also hurt our economy, which is largely based on hospitality and tourism. And so I think it's a great opportunity for many members of this council who have not been here when the previous decision was made, just to reaffirm this body's commitment to oppose offshore drilling for all the reasons that were stated in the resolution and here tonight. So I just want to thank everyone who participated, as well as Mr. Tower, for bringing this forward, and thanks for your support.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Lucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley? Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
I'm abstaining, and I'd like to state my reason. I've been advised by the JAG Council at least for 3 more days. I'm a 41-year employee of the Department of Defense. Department of Defense has taken no official position, therefore I have to abstain on this issue. Additionally, I received more than the threshold income and dividends from petroleum exploration companies, and therefore I cannot vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 10 to 0, with Mr. Moss abstaining, you've approved the resolution to oppose offshore drilling and seismic testing.
Okay, under ordinances and resolution, item 2, resolution to request the Circuit Court to order a referendum election be held on November 3rd, 2020. Ray, stating, should the City Council adopt an ordinance requesting a change to the city charter that would provide for the election of council members who represent each of the city's 7 residence districts only by voters who reside in the respective residence districts as opposed to the current system of at-large voting, and that was requested by Councilmember Abbott.
The first speaker is Barbara Messner, and after Ms. Messner is Teresa Dixon.
Good evening. And
Welcome back.
thank you. I just want to thank Ms. Henley for the mask, and I hope her husband's doing well. Okay, I'm opposed to the referendum at this time. There's been referendums on light rail. I can't even remember how many. They're always worded strangely. You know, the citizens don't get to pick the wording, and they're non-binding. And I don't think the timing is right for this. Ms. Abbott, you know, has been in office 4 years. There's been years that groups have talked about this. But I want to be able to vote for everyone because you all vote on their budget, and their budget is, we're in debt. And, you know, I've talked about due process. I've shown you that before. But this is the lawsuit by Letitia Holloway and Georgia Allen. Georgia Allen ran for office in, I think, 2005 and again in 2008. But there were 7 people in the race. You know, I don't think we should keep changing the districts, and we shouldn't be changing them based on certain minorities. You know, we can't change it for some people that are doing this. In the lawsuit, the defendants in 2018, Virginia Beach City Council, Ben Davenport, Mr. Dyer, Ms. Henley, Ms. Kane, who's not here, Mr. Moss, who I think he said he's leaving in 3 days. I will take your advice, Mr. Moss, and not say anything, or Mr. Dyer. John Uren, who's no longer here, and Ms. Wilson, who's been here since 2096. And it's also, the defendant is Mr. Hanson, who's not here, and Donna Patterson. We have a lot of problems with voting. We shouldn't have any, you know, changes and a referendum with only 3 months to prepare. I think this requires a lot more time, and apparently through the courts is the best way, and I don't want another non-binding referendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moss.
Ms. Messer, just for clarification, I'm retiring in 3 days from 41 years with the Navy. I'm not leaving the council, and I'm not leaving the city.
Leaving the council.
No, I'm just retiring from the Navy.
Okay, I know how long you've been there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Teresa Dixon, and after Ms. Dixon is Lewis Hasty. Teresa Dixon, you can go ahead and start making your way to the podium, ma'am. Thank you. And then after Ms. Dixon again is Lewis Hasty.
Good evening.
Good evening. I've never done anything like this before, so please bear with me.
Just relax and have fun.
I'm going to have to agree with Ms. Messner. I'm opposed to doing this close to the election, only because you all have so much on your plate at this time that this is something that maybe needs to be deferred for a little while. And that's pretty much all I have to say because I'm a little anxious.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Next speaker is Lewis Hasty, and after Mr. Hasty is Jimmy Capps. Lewis Hasty. Mr. Capps, Jimmy Capps. And after Mr. Capps will be Ginger Capps.
Welcome, Jimmy.
I'm Jimmy Capps. I'm a local innkeeper. I live at 940 Cardinal Road in the Birdneck section of Virginia Beach. I'm also a board member of the Virginia Beach Hotel Motel Association. I want to read a letter that was written by Russell Lyons, our president, who is unable to be here tonight. On behalf of the Virginia Beach Hotel Association, I wanted to share our insights regarding the resolution to place a voter referendum on the ballot in November, which could change the way our city officials are elected. This is a complex issue deserving our thought, discussion, and engagement. The Virginia Beach Hotel Association would like to better understand the potential options and assist in the education and communication with our members. It is a complex issue worthy of engagement and review. Our membership appreciates your insights, consideration, and requests to defer any decision until further review can be accomplished. I understand that back in the 90s, our mayor at that time commissioned a committee, appointed a group of people to be a commission to look at reapportionment. And I'm wondering if that's something we might be able to do today. The Virginia Beach Hotel Association strongly recommends we defer this issue for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Ginger Capps. And after Ms. Capps is Samuel Small.
Welcome, Ginger.
Hello, everyone. Mayor Dyer, members of council, and Mr. Duhaney, it's good to see you all again. This evening, our school board is also holding a most important vote as well, addressing what our 2020-2021 school year will look like. As you can imagine, that is a top priority to our school board, teachers, staff, as well as families of children who will be attending school. It's vital that we hear from our school board members before ward system governance be voted on by council. And here is why. The proof is in the numbers. I've taken a close look at 6 public school systems in Hampton Roads. The 6 cities I've compared are Chesapeake, Newport News, Norfolk, Portsmouth, Suffolk, and of course, Virginia Beach. 3 of these cities are governed by ward systems, and 3 are governed by at-large systems. The first that we're going to look at is Newport News. It is governed by a ward system. It has a total of 36 schools. 22 are accredited, 14 are not. The next system we'll look at is Norfolk. Norfolk is also governed by a ward system. Norfolk has a total of 50 schools. Of those 50 schools, 33 are accredited, 17 are not. The next up is going to be Portsmouth. Portsmouth has a total of 19 schools. 14 are accredited, 5 are not. Now we're going to look at our school systems that are governed by at-large. First is Chesapeake. Chesapeake has a total of, sorry about that, I'm a quick turner. Chesapeake has a total of 45 schools. 100% of Chesapeake schools governed by an at-large system are accredited. Next, we're going to look at Suffolk. Suffolk has 19 schools. Of those 19 schools are 100% accredited. Last is Virginia Beach. We have 82 schools. Of course, we all know we are governed by an at-large system, and 82 of our schools are fully accredited. This is why we need to hear from our school board. Why are ward system schools falling behind? Why are they falling behind an at-large system? Perhaps if we give our school board members time to weigh in on this, we would have those answers. If you all cannot answer this for me, respectfully, you all are not qualified to take this vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Samuel Small. And after Mr. Small is David Grotmall.
I'm going to go ahead and expand on my research I presented last Tuesday for
Sir,
council.
wait just one
Yeah,
second
could you
till you're
wait?
at the podium, please.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to go ahead and finish my research that I presented last Tuesday here to council, but first I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge the objections to this amendment, to this resolution. First off, I'm major in favor of district voting, and I want to go ahead and address an objection to Mrs. Ginger Capes, because first off, that's not an accurate statistic, because usually schools, and especially like how good the school is based off the property value and the budgets those city governments have to work with their school system. So that's not fair to go ahead and point that to an at-large system. That's very inaccurate. So I'm going to go ahead and start back around, back when we left off around right about white flight, right when Brown v. Board's getting enforced, okay? So it's roughly 1963, a year before the Civil Rights Act, when we're going ahead and becoming a city. So then, to my knowledge, based off Holloway et al., City Council, I don't know if we originally started as a at-large system, but the year 1966 sticks out to me. Because that's when it's set in stone, it's an at-large system. And I think it's very important to understand what's going on the year 1966. Because 1965, we just passed the Voting Rights Act. And what this allowed the Attorney General to do of the United States is go ahead and fight in court gerrymandered districts. But if you don't have a district, then it's harder to really fight against a gerrymandered system. And that's what the at-large system is. It's gerrymandered. So we can move forward. And again, I want to make a point out too. We didn't get our first black council member until 1986. So the people who created this system were all white. And I have a problem with that. Because the original population of Virginia Beach wasn't all white. And they created a system that gave whites the political power. Councilman Berlucci, you support no discrimination in business. I'm asking you, don't support it in our voting system. I'm begging you, as a millennial. There's a reason millennials aren't coming back to Virginia Beach. It's because it's not just the city itself, we feel like almost our government's outdated. The system is rooted in segregation, for God's sakes. That's why we get the increase of population in the 60s by 172,000 residents, 95% which were white. I based this research off Dr. Barry Graham, who was my government teacher at Kempsville. I based my research off of Dr. Doherty at Virginia Commonwealth University, who wrote his book, Keep On Keeping On. And he examined the effects of Brown v. Board here in Virginia Beach. Not in Virginia Beach, but in Virginia, as well as Princeton County in the town of Virginia Beach. It's clear to me that in response to the Voting Rights Act, the City Council created that large system to go ahead and gerrymander the city so the black vote is always dominated by the white majority. I really appreciate the time you all gave me to go ahead and educate you on this. I think there's more points to be made. And again, the business community is saying, well, it's not a good time right now. It's not a good time. My parents told me always to do the right thing, no matter the time. So again, a vote against this referendum is a vote for segregation. Thank you.
The next speaker is David Grotmall. And after Mr. Grotmall is Diana Howard.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. My name is David Grotmall. I live at 219A 68th Street, and I'm not a dynamic speaker. But I feel like most of the other speakers that 3 months is not long enough for the people of this city to understand what will be before them on November 3rd. Some of you may remember Swindell Pollock. He was my father-in-law before he passed away, and he was on the Prince Anne County Board of Supervisors when the county merged with the town of Virginia Beach in 1963. And they specifically put this arrangement together, and I believe it was so all of the council would be voted on by all the city population so that they would work together and solve problems, citywide problems together. They felt that if one council member was beholden to only the constituents in a borough or a district, the council member might not want to cooperate as much with council member in another borough. This way, what you're doing now, I've seen it over and over again. You've made compromises, you've worked together, you've solved problems. You've got a lot of problems ahead of you. And I just say to you, please don't go through this again. It's just not necessary. You need to stay together and work as a whole council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Diana Howard is the next speaker. Then after Ms. Howard will be Andrew Jackson.
Welcome, Dee.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and welcome to our city, Mr. Day. I hope you really love it here. Thanks. We all do. Anyway, I'm Diana Howard, and I'm the chair of the Virginia Beach Tea Party, and we are in favor of the referendum being put on the ballot. We have talked about this for years. We have gotten it on the ballot before, and we voted in favor of it, and the General Assembly decided our vote didn't count. So it didn't go. We tried to get it on the ballot by referendum before. We were short signatures. Some of you we've seen at candidates' forums, and you all were either in favor of putting it on the ballot or you were in favor of it. And those of you that were not in favor of it, at least were in favor of having the discussion on it, which we've never had. So I would appreciate it if you would all put this on the ballot, because it's not your choice. It is our choice. This is our government. It is up to us whether we have an at-large, and it would be not an all-at-large or an all-district voting system. We would still have a hybrid system here, because 4 of you are at-large. So you would still be voted on by everybody, and only 7 of you would be in districts. I don't know how many times I've talked to people and they don't even know that they can vote for, a district person. They like, I'm not in that district, so I can't vote there. And we're like, you're an at-large person, at-large district, we can vote for everybody. And they're surprised about it because it is foreign to them that we have such a system. So if you would please vote in favor of this, because it's our choice, not yours, right? I would be glad to put on a forum where we can do both sides and educate the public on what would it do? What does an at-large system versus a district voting, or in our case, a hybrid at-large district voting system would be? And I would appreciate your time, and thank you for your vote.
The last speaker is Andrew Jackson.
Welcome, Andrew.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager, and citizens. We've been down this road a bunch of times. We've had this discussion. I think when I ran in 2008, we were discussing it before that. What this is, and let everybody understand what this does. If city council person from Kempsville received every single vote there was from voters in Kempsville, every vote, Kempsville people saying, yes, we want her. You could take one vote more that came from across this city and somebody that didn't want her to get elected and beat her. Understand that, citizens. It's a system that is rigged. And everybody understands that. There's not a whole lot of times that the Tea Party and I stand side by side, but yes, on this one we do, because we've both seen it. We've seen what it does. And some of these council members on here have seen it. The other thing it does, it restricts a lot of people that could be good council people from running. You know why? It's called dollars. And you'll notice that the business community was here. They want to let it stand as it is. It benefits them. They can direct that. This is wrong. This hybrid system is wrong. There's only 1 or 2 in the country that are like that.
Somebody said, well, we look at the representation. Look at the U.S. Congress. Look at the state. They all get voted for in their district, and they all have to work together. So that is an excuse. That's not an excuse at all. The excuse is they want to maintain the status quo that we know is wrong, and it can be manipulated. One vote can take a person away from a district that everybody in the district wants them. And it's been like that. It's not new. This argument has been there. Most people that don't understand it do understand it now because it's been here. We need to stop this foolishness and do it right. You can have districts, and those folks in that district will have a person that they can go to. It's the same as the government we got in the state and in the nation. I don't understand what's so hard to understand about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay, Ms. Abbott?
I'd like to move for approval of the ordinance as passed out.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that. I'd like to,
Okay, discussion? Mr. Moss?
well, I appreciate Ms. Cap speaking because she gave me an opportunity to, because she challenged if we didn't understand what effect this would have on our school systems and their performance. Well, first of all, as I've explained it to many people, there's a big difference between correlation and there is in causality. And Fairfax County has a ward system. They have full-time council members with staff. I don't think anyone thinks Fairfax County has a poor-performing school system. There are communist nations and there are socialist nations in this world whose students outperform our students on math and science, and that's just a fact. Does that have anything to do with the type of government they have? I suspect not. I think there's lots of other reasons, socioeconomic reasons, classroom size, lots of things. But it's not the form of government they had. We had appointed school boards for a long time. When I first got here in 1986, we had appointed school boards. We had a fantastic school system then. The school board wasn't even elected. That went out on referendum when we changed the council and changed the direct election of the mayor. School board got elected. So I think the manner in which governing bodies are elected has no direct influence per se, the structure itself. Now, to the extent that systems of government have lack of competition, have barriers to entry, those things influence who sits here, and that does influence where the benefits of taxation dollars go. And I think that was Mr. Jackson's point. I ran with John Perry on a ticket in 1986. He's a retired history teacher from Kentsville High School. He lived in Ellen Jade Gardens, which was a traditionally African-American community going way back. His daughter, Becky Liveless, used to be on, I think it was Wavy TV 10. Some of you may remember Becky. So, and that was an uphill fight. And I was on that ticket when they ran those outrageous monkey ads on TV. And I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about that in our court litigation. So there has been a history in this community. I can't say I experienced the same way John Perry did, but I was on that ticket with John Perry along with Nancy Parker, Sam Myers, and Walt Vargo. And we did experience that. So there is some truth and resonance to that. I've served as a borough council member from the Kentsville Borough. I lived in Thalia because I couldn't believe between Linville Crescent and Thalia Creek, that was part of Kentsville. Because at one time, way back when in the borough, that creek went further into the Kentsville Borough, and all that changed. I won't go over all the history I gave the other time we talked about this issue of the history of this system, but when we had the system of boroughs, there was I think it was 517 eligible adults to be the Blackwater council member. Now, you can say everybody votes for everyone, but I think you could say your choice was very limited. And there was less than 4,000 or less than 5,000 in what was then the Pungo Borough. So that system wasn't about so we all would work together. It was done at that time frame to make sure the agricultural community wasn't going to be outvoted by the urban areas. And it went to the Supreme Court, but that was then, this is now. And I think the expectations are different today. And there is barrier to entry. It's very expensive. And I know some of the business community are so concerned about people being well-educated on the issues. Well, I saw what political action committees can do to well-educate people on the issues. When you vote against flooding because it's not enough money, they run an ad that says you voted against flooding. Obviously, they like half-baked education. When you vote against education because they're raising the real estate tax unnecessarily for it, you vote no against education. They weren't very interested in fully educating the voter on the issues. So I think their argument rings hollow in real life. And if you look at the stuff that they run and the negative ads that they run, it's not a genuine position to take. It's a stall position to take, unless we just need to call it like it is. I don't blame them for being down here and wanting to defend the status quo. I don't care what the answer is, but as Mr. Jackson said, it's your decision to make. And do you really think that you need 6 months or a year of people who don't want to change it telling you and educating you on the issue? I think people know what the question is. You know, it's amazing. We're all going to run for re-election. None of us are campaigns. We've got to have this rigorous commission to educate the voters on our record, to educate you on us, but we want your vote. But yet when we want to take a vote that gives you an opportunity maybe to change it, oops, we got to have lots of education, lots of time. I think voters are very smart. They know when a structure is serving them and when there's not. And this vote will tell you more about who you should be voting for, whether you get the choice or not. Because do they believe that you are smart enough, that you really are the sovereign people, that we really serve at your consent? But oops, but not if you get the vote on how that consent is derived. There's something inherently wrong with that. I know people look back and say the General Assembly of States used to appoint U.S. senators. No one around here is old enough to remember that. But we went to popular. Did that have a structural change? Yes, it did. Would anyone want to go back and say, let's go back to having the political people pick who gets to be U.S. Senator? No one wants to go back. Are there disadvantages of what we have? Absolutely. But do we really want to hold on to a system and not give people a chance to think that they want to change it, where money is more important than relationship with the voters? And that we're going to deny you a choice. I'm not afraid. You might come back and say, we don't want this. We don't know enough. It's too early. Well, guess what? It doesn't take long to vote no. I mean, that's pretty quick. At least you know your vote means something. And I think that we ought, this body here, Mr. Mayor, we should trust the voters. We should not impose a barrier on the voters. If they're smart enough to vote for us when we're on the ballot, they're more than smart enough to vote on this issue, and they're entitled to it. Why do we want to be in the way? Are we afraid? I'm not afraid. I can accept a yes or a no, because it's not my choice. So why are we afraid? What makes us think that our knowledge and our position is superior of the people who actually hire us? I have a hard time with this. I look forward to what other people have to say. I think you can make good cases, but guess what? They don't need the council making the case for them. There'll be plenty of people out in the community who benefit from this change and who benefit from not changing. And that's political competition. That's the competition of ideas in the marketplace at the ballot box. And that's what makes America different from every other country. And we go backwards. And we don't give confidence in our people. And we want political capital from these people to do other things. But we're saying, no, you don't know enough. We don't trust you. We're concerned. This might have a structural change. But guess what? This country is an experiment in self-governing. We are going to do things that are a mistake. But guess what? In our country, the people have the right to make a mistake and then correct it. Let's see if the people want to correct how we elect this body. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else at this?
Mayor,
What? Mayor?
Okay, Mr. Wood.
Thanks. I appreciate Mr. Moss's comments, but I differ on that. I've got several points on this. First and foremost, there's no public input on this. This has been compared to light rail a couple of times, light rail decision. You know, light rail had thousands of engaged people on both sides of that issue. Both sides were engaged with their facts, their experts, their opinions, and there were debates on this fully 10 months before the light rail referendum. I went back and actually looked at newspaper articles, and the oldest one I could find was 10 months prior to that in January. You know, Ms. Howard made a comment, she goes, we've never had the discussion. And that couldn't be shown any more than in this public hearing. We had 19 speakers yesterday, or last time, and what, 9 this time, 8 this time. The grand total of 27 people have spoken, of which there are 3 or 4 repeats that I think, I'm not 100% sure of that. And they're correct, every single business association that has stepped up and mentioned it, as well as the Farm Bureau. We got an email from the Farm Bureau today saying they're opposed to it. And I think when you talk to them, they're not opposed to the concept, they're opposed to the speed in which this is progressing. CIP projects, the comp plan, the city manager search, council retreats, the Confederate statue, these are all examples of issues where we've had multiple public hearings with a lot of public interaction, town halls, et cetera, and arguably, I'd say none of those are as transformative as this particular item. And let's talk about the school board, because Ms. Capps brought it up and Mr. Moss did as well. Absolutely not. We are not required to engage them. We can push this on them. It's in the city charter. I talked to the city attorney today. They are elected as we are elected. But I don't think that's the best way to do business. I don't think that's the best way to work with our partners. In the last couple of days, I've spoken with the school board chair, the school board vice chair, the former chair, and the Centerville rep, and I ran out of time to call other people as I was going down the list, just to confirm they've heard nothing about this, they have not been engaged on it, and that has not been a topic for them because they're surrounded by COVID, and they are working with the issues regarding the, whether or not the kids go back to school, how they go back to school, and all that. So they have not been brought into this. One of them specifically asked, could we not consider it until they have the opportunity to weigh in? Their process and procedure questions on their side. And one of the questions they asked is, okay, what does this mean for us with respect to electing the school board chair? Because, you know, the mayor is elected at large, has been elected at large for quite some time, but the school board chair is selected from within that group. So that would not be necessarily somebody who's elected by everybody else. So I think that's a valid question. I think they should be at the table for this discussion. Process is an issue here as well. This changes the way we do things, and something that changes our voting system, something that's fundamental of that, should be the subject of multiple discussions, engagements with the community, topics of retreat, and this just hasn't happened. And you know what? Even if we do decide to put this on the ballot, the question itself, in my opinion, is problematic. It presupposes that the current system is flawed, and we know it's withstood at least 2 legal challenges in the past. It doesn't take into account any other form of voting, and I think that's important. Mr. Wright, who I believe was the past president of the NAACP last week, and Mr. Parham also, they were advocating for an all-at-large system, and that's similar to what Chesapeake and Portsmouth has. So that's another option that we could take a look at. If we're going to look at these things, we need to look at all options. Tucson, Arizona, that's kind of an interesting one because I did my Google search and I actually said, how does this work? Tucson has kind of an interesting way that they do it. Their council members go through a 2-step process. They're nominated by ward or district, and then they're voted at large, citywide. So it's a 2-step process. That's potentially, something that we could consider. But again, that's something, whether it's at large, whether it's district, whether it's a hybrid, there's a million different things. And then finally, this question I asked before, what's the problem we're trying to solve here? If it's representation, I think a number of people have made the argument and made the comments that, you want to be able to vote, Ms. Messner said this specifically, you want to vote for everyone who raises your taxes and spends your money. Not just your district rep and a couple at-large people. Ease of access for candidates. Well, look, I said it before, I'll say it again. I don't think people generally overly concerned with making our jobs easier to run for office, but maybe it may be easier for other people to run. But it's no cheaper to run in a district race. If you take a look at partisan races, the 21st House District, $1.5 million was spent to garner 12,400 votes. And, okay, so that's a partisan election, we can remove that. In the Norfolk Super Ward 6 election in 2016, $500,000 was spent. In the Norfolk Ward 5 district in 2010, $260,000 was spent for 6,000 votes. Now, you keep in mind, 260,000 in a citywide election where we are generating 100+ thousand votes, that's a different story. 81,000 was spent in 2018 in the Norfolk's Ward 2 race that generated 5,000 votes. Now, I had to go back several years on that because these people are typically running unopposed, and because the system, frankly, protects incumbents, at least in this situation. Now, council members in an at-large system, and this was brought up by other people, can be impartial. They rise above limited perspective of single district and concerns within them, and you're able to negotiate more. There's less vote trading and that sort of thing. But people talk about the barrier to entry. The number of candidates is increased by this system. More people can run, and I think that's kind of important. And if you look at it, and my last real point here is I went back and started doing the math, and I'll tell you, if you have a chance, go on the city's website. It's got the history of council members. It's kind of fascinating when you see that. And I went through and counted. I've served with 31 different people on this council. Now, there's only 11 people here. So in my time, it's essentially turned over 3 times, the council has, and in various times. And some districts have turned over a number of times. Some have not turned over, but there has been certainly overturned. So I guess to wrap up my comments, I can't support this. I think it throws the process under the bus. I think there's very little civic engagement, and likely even less now with COVID raging again and the additional restrictions that were placed on us today in terms of these things. I think the question is flawed, and I think we haven't identified the problem to be solved, so I can't support it.
Okay, Mr. Moss, and then Ms. Abbott.
I certainly not want to get, and everybody's entitled to their view, and I respect those views. I want people to remember, we didn't get light rail because city council wanted to give you a referendum. We had lots of discussion, lots of money being spent, lots of lobbying with your own money in well-structured public hearings and settings. But how did you get a referendum on light rail? Because the citizens exercised tremendous energy with no help from the government, I might add, nor should they have gotten it. We had to fight for it, petition it, get the qualified signatures, go to court over it, and fight the city attorney over it to get a judge who said that was rightfully done. That's how we got a light rail referendum. Not because someone wanted you to have it, you had to fight to get it. And you'll probably have to fight to get this, because the system does not want to change. He's right. We've had a lot of changes on but the voting pattern and the institutions and the special interest groups that get represented, the votes remain the same. Kind of like Washington. Faces change, but the votes don't. Why? There's lack of competition. Sure, a district race can be expensive. Someone can spend a lot of money, but guess what? If you're only going 60,000 people, you can do a lot of shoe leather in 60,000 things when you're not trying to run 257 square miles citywide. So there are realistic barriers to entry in this system, which is in part why incumbency is so important. You heard it right here, incumbency. Some people got off because they went on lots of travel at government expense. They should have been booted off. Some of us got all booted off in 1990 because of the riot that happened at the ocean front. We ran the ship aground, and rightfully so, we got fired. Some of us came back in 92 like I did and got reelected. So there's lots of things to look at, but the bottom line is, does the system create realistic barriers to get greater, and I'm going to talk about later about diversity of our boards and commissions here later tonight, but does it give us the diversity of viewpoints? Isn't just racial diversity or male, female, it's value diversity is equally important. Economic diversity is equally important. And this system that we have has throfted that over time. You know, you go back and say in 86, well, John Perry got elected. Yeah, because they were so reckless and arrogant, they ran that crazy monkey ad on TV, and after that played, I think, maybe 1 or 2 times, there was a total revolt against that whole thing. But in 1990, how this all started was Al Balco got elected by the people in Lynn Haven, but got voted out by the citywide. And why? Because a lot of special interest money didn't like the way Al Balco was voting. These are the things that go on. And if you think there isn't vote working or negotiations that take place today, yes, there is. And there should. There's nothing inherently evil about that. It is about trade space and trying to find some common ground. There'll be that under a district system. But do you really need all this education? And it isn't whether we think there's a problem or not. Our opinions are meaningless of whether there's a problem or not. The only person whose opinion matters, because the city's charter doesn't belong to the city council. The city charter is a covenant between the General Assembly and the residents of Virginia Beach. It was adopted by the General Assembly, subject to what? Ratification by the voters of Virginia Beach. That's your charter. That's not council's charter. That's our charter. And you should have the right, and we shouldn't stand in the way. And if this vote doesn't go, I recommend that someone go out there and be at those polls on election day collecting the signatures, because this system has a bias against change. It has a bias against disrupting and reallocating and making power more distributed and giving more people an effective voice at that dais, right there at that microphone. Just watch the meetings, watch the votes. And like I said, you earned the right by your own initiative for a referendum on light rail. This body was not in favor of giving you that right.
And Ms. Henley?
Well, Mr. Moss, I think you've forgotten that the people did vote to keep this system. I didn't check the exact date, but it was
1996.
sometime in the late 90s. Yes, it was about 20 years ago. I got to tell you, time flies. Doesn't seem like it's been that long, but yes, the people of Virginia Beach did vote to keep this system. It was on the referendum. And I think once people realized that they would be giving up 6 votes, they said, oh, we've got a good system. We want to keep it. So please don't make it sound like the people never got to vote on this. The people did vote, and they voted to keep this system.
They voted in 1994 also to get rid of it.
But they voted after that to keep it.
True.
Because they didn't like, they said the system, the
Okay, one at a
question
time,
was
please.
not clear. And so that's why it was held again in the late 90s, and that time the people voted to keep this system.
Okay, Ms. Abbott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to muddle what this resolution's about, especially since I've asked for it to be placed on the agenda, but I do want to say one thing that was said. Every year we have talked about bringing this discussion to the table. We've talked about it at retreats. We've talked about it during our legislative packet. We talked about it in December when I passed this originally around, and we talked about it at the February retreat. I don't want the public to be confused. No discussion moved forward on this because not enough people in this room wanted to move it forward. And I had to make a choice. The truth is, though this was brought up in 1996 and it did not pass, 62% of the voting population as it exists today has never weighed in on this issue. So some of the people did weigh in on this, but 62% have not, and they deserve an opportunity to say something. The world is changing significantly right now, and if we are resistant to that change, we will be left behind. But I didn't bring this to assert that my idea of what our voting system is the right idea for our voting system. To me, this is the start of the conversation. We're taking a pulse of our community and saying, hey, do you guys want to see this be different? And if they say no, then the conversation can change to, all right, well, how do we make ourselves more equitable and more accessible and more transparent and more diverse in a different way? But this is the start of a conversation. We go to the polls in November, and we always look at the ballot, and there's always things on the ballot that I hadn't heard of or so-and-so didn't know was going to be on there. And there's plenty of opportunity for people to learn about this. So I kind of share the same opinion with Mr. Moss in that I think people have enough time to get educated on it. But regardless or not, this starts the conversation. We get real data of how the public feels about this issue, and then we can have a real conversation. Do we go to a true at-large system? Instead, we say, you know, we're going to get rid of district residency altogether, and we're going to say everybody runs for this at the same time, and we'll see what happens. But 87% of the top 100 cities in this country are in some form of a district voting system. So we are not normal in how we elect people. And I have that list that I'll email to all of you, but if you're interested. But this is a question about what does the public want, and this is the start of that discussion. because we have the census, we have redistricting. This is timed perfectly with all of that new information, and this can really be an opportunity for us to lead the way in having these discussions and being open to what the future looks like for our city. Thank you.
Okay, we have Mr. Tower.
Yes, Mr. Tower, if you'd like to begin your comments, please.
Thank you, and thanks to my fellow councilman for that engaging discussion. I'm going to vote in favor of this resolution, and the reason I am, in addition to the other reasons that have been expressed tonight, and I won't repeat those, is I believe that there is enough time for people to become educated about this issue. I think it is not something that is that difficult to understand. And I believe that the turnout for this election will be much, much greater than, in all likelihood, than any election in the near future. And I think if there is one thing that makes this a good idea, it's that we get a real reading about how people feel about it. I think there'll be plenty of discussion. I think people that care about it will know what they're voting. People that don't care about, they won't. But that's the same with any election. It's not just because it's a referendum on the ballot as well. So I'm going to vote for it because I think the voters are entitled to get a look at this. I think Councilmember Abbott has been pushing this since I've gotten on council, so I've certainly had time to listen to it. And I don't find, having listened to both sides of it, that the issue is one going one way or the other is a terrifically difficult decision, or one that is necessarily going to make fundamental changes in how our city is run. I do think it is one that the voters ought to determine, and I think a vote taken in a federal presidential year is the best way to judge their desires in that regard. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else at this point? Okay, Ms. Wilson, then Mr. Wood.
No, I was pointing to Rosemary.
Okay, okay.
I agree with a lot that's been said here, though I don't think this is the beginning of, the vote would be the beginning of a conversation. I think it would be the end of a conversation, because that's when you decide what you want to do. And there's so many different options that are out there. I have to say, I agreed with a lot of what Ms. Messner had to say tonight, and Ginger Capps, and Diana Howard. We haven't had a discussion. In fact, tonight is the biggest discussion that we've had about district voting. There was something that came up last time we talked about this, about the ballot itself, and it was said that there was not another referendum on the ballot. Well, that's not true. There is another referendum that's going to be on the ballot November 3rd, and it's about voting. So you would have two different referendums concerning voting at the same time, which I think could be confusing. I think it's rather unfair that the school board, who is our partner in helping the city with what they have to do with education, and they are affected by this, that they were never talked to, and their opinion was never asked, and they never had a chance to weigh in on things. And it's been shown that schools in a ward system don't thrive as well as they do in the large system like we have. The system is not meant to benefit the candidates. It's supposed to benefit the city, the citizens and the city. And I think we have a really great city. It's not perfect, but you look at, we have a AAA bond rating. The council works well together. We have the safest city of our size, the best school system. It's not really a bad thing to look at that we've done with this particular voting system. There's a lot of power when you have 11 votes, when you can vote for 11 people. And you're going to give up that power and only have 5 people accountable to you. And if you lived in a district and you didn't get along with your council person, you might have quite a problem. I said this last time. we've had a lot of time, but we could have prepared for this. We could have put together a commission to look at all the different types and of voting, which has been brought up. And it's like, here's your choice. And there could be more than one choice. But we haven't taken the chance and the time to look at those choices. And we're just putting it out there, okay, you want this or that? And here it is at the 11th hour, right before it has to be before the circuit court to decide whether we get this on the ballot or not. And with the pandemic, and the governor has just rolled us back to where a small, no more than 50 people can get together in a room. We put more emphasis on a project than we have on something that could really change our way of life. So I just think that the timing of this is really, really terrible, and I can't support it.
Okay, anybody else at this point? Yes, Ms. Wooten.
So first, I want to correct an error that I made 2 weeks ago when we talked about this issue in my vigor to support it. I quoted a statistic in the 70th percentile with regard to a referendum and a survey. So I'd like to correct that error. I apologize. That statistic does not exist. However, I also want to state that when I ran in 2018, this was a huge issue, and at the time, I supported looking into the system, making sure that we have the right one, and I still do. However, a couple of weeks ago when Councilmember Abbott brought up the resolution, I also expressed that the timing, I was really concerned about the timing, and I still am concerned about the timing because we are in a pandemic. Many of the citizens have spoken and have, requested more time to be educated on the issue, to do research, and to ensure that we do have the right system. And I think that's what it really is about. We really need to make sure we have the right system. And how do you do that? You have to research it. You have to become educated on the process. And I think that's important. I think we need to make sure we do it right, so that there's no issue. There's no one saying, we didn't do it right. We weren't educated on it. Do it the right way, And so I want to make sure, I don't want this resolution to not have the support that it needs. I'd like to submit another motion to defer the issue so that we can have time to do the research and the education that's needed with less than 100 days to election. I think this resolution is worthy, of looking into and supporting, but I don't want it to not have the support that it should have. So I would like to make a motion to defer the resolution.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for a substitute motion, substitute.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
For how long of a deferral?
I'd have to say indefinite.
What? I didn't hear.
Okay, a motion and a second for an indefinite deferral.
Indefinite.
Okay.
Well, we only have a certain length of time if it's going to be on the referendum.
I think that's the idea of the motion.
Part of the problem is there hasn't been enough time to, even if we did it between now and then, there's not enough time to study it.
Yes, Mr. Moss.
I just have one comment for the viewing public, because I think that's who we work for. There's an expression that's certainly figured, justice delayed is justice denied. And I encourage all the people that when you look at this as a litmus, as you go to the polls in November, who trusts you and who does not.
Well,
Yes, Ms. Wooten.
I'd just like to say that, in an effort to delay, don't want to deny any justice, because Lord knows, I understand the history of our city. I understand the history of where we are, and where we're going. And so my motion to delay it is not to deny anything. It's not to say no. It's not to silence the people. Absolutely not. It is to ask to make sure we give this resolution the opportunity and the merit it needs to go forward, but with research, education, discussion. You know, oftentimes my colleagues say that there's not enough community engagement in serious matters like this. This is indeed a very serious matter, and it warrants more discussion and education and research. And so that is why I'm making this motion.
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
This conversation started with Mr. Moss, I believe, in which he said we need to vote, say yes or no. And that's what I think we ought to do. We need to get this resolved tonight and get it over with. Deferring it is just adding more indecision to what goes on in the city and so forth. And I'm opposed to deferring it. We either vote it up or we vote it down, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I withdraw my second then.
Okay. And does anybody else want a second? The motion for deferral?
Well, it would just seem to me that a deferral, if it can't get on this ballot, then the basic thing is moot. I mean, we need to kind of just start it over. So, okay.
So if I could.
Yeah, Mr. Wood.
You know, it's, and I understand where Ms. Wooten's going on this, and I agree with a lot of what you said, because, you know, I think we need to have the discussion on this. And I think if it's a no vote, that doesn't preclude us from having a more discussion about it. And you know, I'm fine with it. If we want to talk about this at a retreat, as a topic of a retreat, and actually get into it and talk about it, because, you know, the stuff I've learned about the various voting systems just in the last couple of days, you know, maybe these are better, maybe they're not, but I think we need to talk about it. So I respect where you're coming from, but I think, I like what Lewis said.
Give it merit, that's all.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we can't still do
Right.
Yeah.
And then I just think going forward that, you know, I guess my concern right now is with the COVID and the ability to get the proper, you know, education out and the engagement that we need. But also the fact that, you know, being a professor of government for a while, there are multiple, we actually did a study on these at Region a number of years ago, and there's maybe 7 or 8 different types of systems that are out there. And the idea about using academic resources, I think, as Ms. Wooten indicated, you know, to do a study that would be non-biased, that would present the positives and negatives on the different types of voting and figure out where the best fit is. And, you know, once again, I am open to change, but this is just one option that we're voting on today, when there might be multiple or, you know, different type of options. So, but, all right, but I guess the motion for substitute is no longer, but at this point, are we ready for the vote?
So we'll be voting on the main motion.
We will be voting on the main now, okay? We are voting, you know, to vote for the resolution at this point.
Are we ready for the?
Yes, we are ready.
Okay. Councilmember, and this is for this is on the main motion made by Councilmember Abbott, seconded by Councilmember Moss.
Okay.
Councilmember Abbott, I'm sorry. This is the main motion that was the motion of Ms. Abbott, seconded by Councilmember Moss. Just wanted to make sure I was understanding correctly. Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berlucci?
No.
Councilmember Henley?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
No.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
No.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
No.
Mayor Dyer?
No.
By a vote of 5-6, that the motion lost, so it was denied.
Okay, Ms. Abbott.
If I could just add, and I appreciate everyone's perspectives tonight. I don't want anyone to leave tonight thinking we can't move past this. It will be my intent that we do what we said we were going to do tonight, and I'd like to see us form a commission to start vigorously doing all the things we shared that we were interested in doing and educating the public and really starting this conversation. I'm delighted that so many of us are interested in the subject matter. And I will work with the city attorney's office to codify that at a future date.
And I'm glad to help you get the commission going and facilitate this and make this a focal point at the next retreat. Okay? All right, moving on, I guess we're opening planning items. First one will be William and Marie Burkholder and Thomas P. Johnson conditional use permit, short-term rental at 4472 Ocean View Avenue, Unit B, District Bayside.
The applicant, William Burkholder, I apologize, and then after the applicant would be Barbara Messner.
Good evening. My name is William Burkholder, and together with my wife Marie, we've applied for this permit. We prepared these comments together, so I'm going to be reading them. This permit application is for beachfront property that we purchased a little less than a year ago in September of 2019. We purchased the property to be our future home as we plan to move here in a few years. When we were looking at the property, we were told by our real estate agent that we could easily rent the unit to cover our costs before moving here ourselves. The previous owner had already been conducting short-term rentals, and based on her rates, we determined that that was a good plan, and so we proceeded with the purchase. After spending a couple of months furnishing the unit and making necessary repairs, we submitted our permit application in November of 2019, thinking we would have our permit by February or March at the latest. Since we needed the rental income to cover our mortgage, we began advertising at the end of November. Not sure how long it would take to get our first rental. As it turned out, our unit received a lot of attention, and we accepted our first rental the last week of December. We were not comfortable with the idea of renting without a permit, but again, we needed the income and assumed it would only be 2 or 3 rentals before we received our permit. During a phone call with the city in early February, we informed the city that we were renting without a permit. We were told we could not register with the Commissioner of Revenue until we received our permit, so although we have been paying our sales taxes, we have not been paying the transient occupancy tax. We have, however, been setting aside money to pay any back taxes we owe, and we will gladly do that. Again, when we started renting without a permit, we had no way of knowing that it would take 9 months to reach this point in the process. Having said that, we want to be sure we are right with the city, so we're willing to pay any fine or whatever we need to do. Out of respect for our neighbors, we've gone to great lengths to ensure our rentals will have minimal to no impact on the neighborhood. We'd like to walk you through some of what we've done, starting with how we manage the property. We do not use a property management company, and we do not use instant booking, which means my wife and I personally evaluate every prospective renter. Prospective renters must agree to our house rules before we will approve their request, and our house rules cover issues pertaining to noise, number of people, number of vehicles allowed, and where those vehicles are allowed to park, along with a number of other things. Ours is a 2-bedroom unit that we rent almost exclusively to couples and families. We do not rent to college kids, and in fact, one of our house rules is that the primary renter must be at least 25 years old. We make it very clear in our advertising that the property is located in a quiet neighborhood and that it is not an appropriate location for beach parties and the like. In fact, we advertise our unit as being appropriate for quiet getaways on a quiet beach, away from the crowds and busyness of the boardwalk. We emphasize this in our advertising and also in our communication with prospective renters. Since this is our future home and these are our future neighbors, we will gladly turn down any renter we're not entirely comfortable with. To give you a flavor of who we rent to, here are some examples. We had 3 sisters in their 60s from north of Toronto who traveled together every summer to see different parts of the continent. This was their first time in the Tidewater area, and they chose our place because they wanted something quiet. We had 2 ministers from a church in Pennsylvania who wanted to use our place as a mini retreat to prepare for their upcoming church year. We had a sister and brother, where the sister was giving the trip as a gift to her brother, because he had spent 6 years on the USS Wisconsin and had not seen the ship since the end of the Gulf War. We had another sister and brother in their 60s who had grown up in Chicks Beach and had not been back in over 30 years. One of our recent renters wrote us this in the middle of her stay. "Today has been such a blessing for me. Your home is so beautiful. Your beach is so peaceful. Thank you for allowing me to finally get some peace. I am truly thankful I chose your home for this quiet weekend." These are the kinds of people we rent to, and we take great pride in seeing our hard work result in someone else's happiness. Once we approve a renter, we communicate with them frequently, including prior to their arrival and during their stay, and we remind them of our house rules and parking requirements in each communication. Our house rules and parking plan are also posted prominently on site. I have copies. I don't know if the council is interested, but thank you. We have 2 security cameras, one facing the parking and one facing the beach. We monitor who is coming and going, where they are parking, and how they are behaving. Being a 2-bedroom unit, we will never have more than 6 people on the property, and we have averaged fewer than 4 people per rental. Should there ever be an issue with a renter or the property, we have provided our phone numbers to our neighbors and have asked them to call us immediately, any time of the day or night, so that we can remedy the issue. And to ensure matters can be addressed quickly, we have hired 2 local caretakers, either of whom can be on the property within 30 minutes. In fact, one of them is a relative of the owner of the unit next to ours and frequently lives right next door. We also have a daughter, an adult daughter, living in Virginia Beach, and she can respond quickly as well. With respect to parking, we have the required 2 parking spaces on our property, and per our house rules, we do not allow our renters to bring more than 2 vehicles. Since it's a 2-bedroom unit and we don't allow more than 6 people on the property, it would be unusual for a renter to have someone come visit. But if they do, there is an additional 3rd space directly in front of our unit that they can use. Finally, we limit our rentals to 1 per 7-day period, again, out of respect for our neighbors. Before I conclude, I just want to take a moment to thank city staff. Mr. Tahan, your staff was extremely helpful, courteous, professional throughout this process. As a retired public servant, I know your jobs are frequently thankless, and so I just wanted to publicly say thank you for what you all do. As far as our application goes, we are not asking for anything unusual for a beachfront property. Our application complies with all the requirements of the ordinance, and we are in agreement with the conditions of the staff in the staff report. We have done everything the city has asked us to do, and we have gone beyond the requirements of the ordinance out of respect for our neighbors. Again, this is not an investment property for us. This is our future home. We will not be conducting short-term rentals indefinitely, just until we move here ourselves. This gives us all the incentive in the world to keep the property well-maintained, to rent to trustworthy people who will care for our property, follow our rules, and respect our neighbors, as we look forward to realizing our dream of living at the beach in a few short years. We thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, sir.
I have a question.
Wait a minute. Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
I understand you live in Richmond, is that where you live?
No, sir. We live in Loudoun County.
And where?
Loudoun County.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
And
Okay.
the next speaker is Barbara Messner, and then after Ms. Messner, there will be 2 speakers via WebEx.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Could I ask the applicant a question?
Yes. Sir, can you come back up?
I'm sorry. I was a little slow to react. I apologize. So, since you live in Loudoun, who oversees this property when you're not here?
Right. We've hired 2 caretakers who live in Virginia Beach, and one of them frequently lives in the unit next door to us. She's a relative of the owner of that unit.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Ms. Messner, and then again, after Ms. Messner, there'll be 2 speakers via WebEx.
Okay.
I have to to bring something up, due process, and I greatly appreciate some people who usually ignore what I have to say, taking something seriously about due process. But I think the fact that we don't get rebuttal, I think John Moss must have spoken for a half hour, back and forth. We don't get to come back. Y'all get to go over this stuff. And the applicants get 10 minutes, and then we don't get to come back. I think, and some of Mr. Moss, I have to call you out. Some of your comments from, decades ago were really inappropriate, and I think Mr. Dyer should have made a comment because they were very inappropriate. Okay, there are 13 on the agenda today. There's over 2,500. And this is, I don't know how many people have admitted that they're not in compliance. They already admit that they haven't received, it hasn't been approved, and they're renting anyway. And it's an investment so they can pay it off. A lot of us can't even afford to go to the beach and pay for parking. And it's not considerate of the neighbors. And, we don't have Air 311, they're overworked, Air Police, the health department doesn't take care of these. Mrs. Henley's, comments are valid. We shouldn't be doing these. And this is not COVID related. Right here, July 23rd, in accordance with special session. The special session and these, the fact that some people can speak electronically, the statutes, that was only advertised one time a month ago. And then we had the meeting in the Beacon. So there isn't due process. And, our police, fire marshal, health department, they haven't been taking care of these since 2015. The first event house was in 99, 2000. The focus of our public safety people, especially during COVID, you don't know who's coming. You have no idea who's coming or how they're going to behave. So I'm opposed to all of them at this time, but especially ones. And this is the picture, the one at Croatan. It's still being rented twice a week. Who's checking in on that? Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speakers are via WebEx. The first one is Scott Rappaport. Sorry, I may misspoke your last name. If you'll pause 2 to 3 seconds before beginning your comments, sir.
Can you, I'm sorry.
Sir, go ahead and begin your comments.
4470A Ocean View Avenue. It's been my experience that the short-term rentals have been disruptive to a densest community as Chicks Beach, and particularly to the 8 homes that are contiguous to this property. The problem, as I see it, is that we have this property and the one contiguous with it in front of me as short-term rentals, particularly with Mr. Burkholder not providing the necessary requirements for his yet. He has a tendency to use that third parking space he mentioned that is not his. It's part of the property at 4470B. It's owned by that property, and it's not his to use. It's supposed to be for egress and ingress only, but that's on the plats that are available to the city, but not necessarily public to the city. It also has a tendency to misrepresent the prior owner as doing short-term rentals. She lived there, and I spoke to her personally, and that was not her intention, and agreed with Mr. Burkholder and others that there's not the opportunity to rebut these comments that he makes with regard to parking at the level of the Planning Commission. Also, the location of parking and personal property is an egress-ingress issue away from his home that interferes with the parking for the rest of those 8 houses. It would be my pleasure that you consider not having short-term parking based on density parking, short-term rental based on density parking, ownership by out-of-town owners who have no contractual obligation to move into these homes. They can say that they want to move in, but by any indication, this is an investment property. Clear, simple documentation of abuse of neighborhoods short of neighbors short of legal issues would be helpful and not available. Thank you for your time.
The next speaker is via WebEx.
Okay,
Could I ask the speaker a question, please? Is that possible?
Go ahead, yes, ma'am.
Sir, where do you live close to the house?
Yeah. I live behind, if his is an oceanfront, can you hear me now? If his is an oceanfront property, I view his and the other property that is a short-term rental. One is directly in front of me, one is diagonally contiguous to that right in front of me. They're right below my bedroom window, if that matters.
The next speaker that is via WebEx is John Incy.
Good evening, City Council. My name is John Ince. I own a townhouse 3 doors away from the Burkholder townhouse. My wife and I have lived here 20 years. We are in one of 4 waterfront townhouses in the Chicks Beach area. One of these 4 townhouses has already been operating as an Airbnb for several years. It immediately created parking and noise problems. One incident lasted all night as a constant police presence tried to control a huge crowd at a Sweet 16 party. Then last fall, the Burkholders made the second of our 4 townhouses into an Airbnb. Things are even worse. Many people rent an Airbnb to party. Having 2 of the 4 beachfront townhouses as short-term rentals creates a miniature Club Med during the summer. The Burkholders are out-of-town investors who never lived here. Having a high turnover Airbnb is apparently more lucrative than having long-term leases where renters can become part of the community. The Burkholders claim they will eventually retire and move here in several years. But that is a significant amount of time for my wife and me, who are in our mid-70s and love our Bayside living. The Burkholders' townhouse is advertised as 2 bedrooms with 2 assigned parking spots. Their tenants have sometimes brought 3 cars and spilled over into a 5-spot reserved area for residents only. 8 townhouses share this 5-spot reserved area. When both Airbnbs have been rented, we have seen the renters taking over most of the 5-spot reserved area. And by the way, right now, there are 3 cars at the Burkholders at an Airbnb rental, apparently, and 2 are in his regular spots, and 1 is in an access that he shouldn't be in. That's right now. When the renters overflow their 2 assigned spots and the 5-spot reserved area is full, renters will unabashedly use one of my assigned spots or just block the whole driveway. This has happened many times. Even if the Burke holders make it clear to their renters that parking in the reserved area or in my parking spots is not allowed, who will police their renters when the Burke holders are in their out-of-town home? The Planning Commission approved this application by a 6-3 vote last May, partially based on meeting section 241.2 of the zoning ordinance. But that ordinance does not address the density of short-term rentals in the area. Please do not let out-of-town investors buy up properties in residential communities and turn them into high turnover, densely packed party houses. Please don't ruin the lives of.
Sorry, Jess?
No.
Or the red light, my apologies. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Wood.
Can I ask Mr. Tejan a question about this, if you don't mind? Based on what this Mr. Ince just said, so if I'm looking at this the correct way, and I didn't get to drive by and look at this particular one, is the access to get to the property there at the left, and that's the easement they're talking about?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
And so you have to drive past this other house to get to that house?
That is correct.
So if they don't park in those two spots and they're blocking the other house?
Correct, and I apologize, give me one moment. Pointer. That's right there. Oh, thank you. The space that Mr. Burkholder, I believe, is referring to is this area right here, which is part of an ingress-egress easement that allows for all of the property owners in this complex to utilize to maneuver and get out of the property. But I believe he's referring this as a potential third space, but that's not a space based on the easement that they would be permitted to park in, which is, but the two required spaces are on the property.
Okay, I mean, I was looking at the comments in the Planning Commission write-up about it, and then, so where the speaker said there was a car, obviously you don't know exactly where that is, but is he talking about it there or down further blocking?
I'm assuming that one of the cars are here, but it sounded like he said there were more than 3 cars. I believe from the speakers at the Planning Commission hearing that I think Mr. Ince had spoken about, there are some people that potentially park in this area as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bobby.
Do we want to have the applicant come back up for rebuttal?
Yes.
So, just to clarify a couple of things. The point Mr. Tahan was or the space he was pointing to, that is the third space in question. That's what we consider overflow parking. That is on an easement. That easement, is it permissible for me to go over there or use that? Okay, so it's one easement that is the entire length of the driveway and then narrows down and turns left and comes in front of our building and stops. That entire easement it's all under one declaration of easement. That easement does not prohibit parking at all. And that's demonstrated by the fact that along the driveway, on the left-hand side, people park there every single day. Residents park there. That is shared parking for the beachside 4 units. You can park on that driveway and you're not blocking access to anything. More importantly, you can park in that third space up next to number 2 and you're not blocking a thing and you're not prohibiting anybody from maneuvering in any way. And if it's possible to go to the photograph on the top of page 8 in the staff report. It's the, yes. So the photo on the right, that's looking right at our unit. The paved section there with the boards. 10 feet to the left is the easement. 10 feet to the right is our property. That's what we're talking about. You can park there and you're not blocking access to anything. We are responsible for maintaining that section of the easement, and as you can see, you can't even tell it's not on our property. Having said all that, that space is not required for us to meet the requirements of the ordinance. We have the 2 spaces we need on our property. The complaints you heard about the Club Med and all that, that's not from our Airbnb. It simply is not. It's the unit next to ours has been conducting short-term rentals for 5 years. They had a bad experience early into their renting, and that's a lot of what the complaints are. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I mean, the parking is not, it's not an issue. Our unit does not contribute to any sort of a parking issue.
Thank you, Mr. Moss.
When did you purchase this property?
In September of 2019.
And this, I'll ask another question for staff, but thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, Mr. Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been out to this property several times now, looking at it, and having had conversations with numerous residents who live in very close proximity to the property. It's clear to me that the gentleman who spoke virtually a few minutes ago represents pretty well the majority of the residents who surround this property, in that I got the same complaints from the people that I talked to in person that I heard him express here on this occasion tonight. It's very tight in there. You have to drive past the house on the road, who's on Ocean View Avenue, to get back in there. And if there are cars parked on that alleyway, it's extremely tight getting back there and into that unit. It is a very close geographical group of homes there, and the fact that there have been so many complaints, and particularly to me, by the people who live in that group of not only 4 homes that are right in there, but a couple of them down the street too. And the fact that it just is not been under the control of the owner, who lives out of town and cannot get there in a reasonable period of time to deal with the issues that the other neighbors are having to deal with. I just cannot support this application, so I'm going to move to deny it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion? Yeah, Mr. Moss.
I have something for the staff, if I could. So if my memory serves me correctly, Mr. Hahn, the 2019 acquisition would make this a non-grandfathered property, correct?
That is correct.
So I'm always troubled, and I always applaud people's honesty, because I think that's what we really want here in this system, and we don't want to create disincentives. But clearly someone knew they had to have a permit, didn't have a permit, and decided to continue to operate like that's okay as long as they eventually give us the money, and didn't show a lot of respect to the process and consciously didn't follow the rules. Now, I'm sure they're not the only one, and I'm not asking for any, but for people listening out there, and this gets back to this question about enforcement that we have, you know, how we do this, but, you know, people are deciding on their own that, oh, obviously that's going to get approved, so let's just operate, and, you know, then we'll give them their money when we have to give it to them because now it's approved. But we've got to figure out something, Mr. City Manager, about how to deal with this, because I don't want to create an incentive for people not to come, and I think Mr. Rouse has talked about that, and there's some credence to what he says there, but also we shouldn't be rewarding people who consciously know they're not grandfathered, operate without the proper authorization, and take for granted that we're going to say yes, because that's just, we wouldn't tolerate that in any other kind of legal proceeding, I don't believe, and I don't know how we have to address it, but it does concern me, and we've heard it more than once at that lectern there from people who likewise have said the same. So I don't know what the answer is right away. You probably don't either, in all fairness. But we have to think about that. But I do believe in this particular case, the land use and the density, the configuration speaks to itself. But I also don't like a process that rewards people who, for all their honesty, consciously decided to apply the law for themselves.
Any other comment? Yeah, Ms. Abbott.
Thank you. I wanted to bring up a kind of another issue to council, something that actually recently I've been hearing a lot about. We have an information issue in the city in terms of how potential buyers are being presented the opportunity of short-term rental. Just in my office in the last week, when I've had people calling for estimates on their insurance, they've said, oh yeah, I was told that the application is a breeze, that you're pretty much guaranteed a win, and you know, you can start until you're told not to do it. And I heard that from a number of people. So I think, not that this is this individual's experience, but I do think that we have an issue with people having accurate information and not being, I don't think we can control what other people tell, especially in the middle of a sales pitch, but I think it would be wise of us to consider some kind of landing page that, you know, so you're thinking about being a short-term rental operator, here's what you need to know, just to kind of combat the misinformation. Because I do think some people think that, hey, you know, I do this until I'm told no. And I don't necessarily, you know, I empathize with that mindset, but I do think that we have that problem, and especially if you're not from here, I think we're going to start seeing that issue more prevalent, so it might be something we want to consider. But Councilman Jones, I also got a number of complaints about this property, so you are not alone.
No, thank you. But I think you bring up some very valid points, Ms. Abbott, and I think that's something we got to look into because you know, I think a lot of these places have been in non-compliance for a while, and, you know, they just understand that, you know, there is a rigorous process that they have to go through, and, you know, so let's see what we can do. Good points. Anybody else at this point?
Just real quick.
Yes.
I think people need to understand that a conditional use permit is not an automatic yes if you think you've checked all the boxes. There's also subjective things that you have to look at, or hear from when you hear from the neighbors or different things, but just because you've checked these boxes of the parking doesn't mean that you're going to get an automatic yes on these things.
No.
And there's a misunderstanding, I think.
Yep. Okay. I think at this point we're ready to find out.
Okay. And this is a motion to deny.
Motion to deny.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Lucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
Aye.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 11-0, this application has been denied.
Okay, moving on to the second planning item, Vacation Properties LLC, Sean and Tijuana Bell, conditional use permit, raise short-term rentals at 304 28th Street, and that's both Unit 310 and 311 Beach District.
The applicant is Tijuana Bell. And then after Ms. Bell is, the only speaker is Barbara Messner.
Okay, welcome.
Good evening. For the property that we have, it's again 304 28th Street, and it's unit 310 and 311. We are also governed by a homeowner association there, And we're only allowed to do one rental per 7 days. My husband and I are gonna manage the property ourselves, and we live local in Chesapeake. We have met the parking requirement and the insurance. We also will do age restrictions on any rentals that we have there. We haven't started renting the property because we was waiting. I know we was dealing with COVID, but we were waiting to make sure that we had an approval first. I know we did get approval and we submitted it from the homeowner association president, giving us their permission in order for us to use this property as a short-term rental. I didn't know what else, was there anything else
okay.
that we need? Yeah.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, Mr. Jones has a question.
Do we have an upfront picture of this property? Yeah, okay.
So,
Okay, Mr. Wood.
and so this is for the two separate items, 525 21st Unit A and B. Are both of those your property, ma'am?
It's 304 28th Street.
This is number
Yeah,
2.
yeah,
Vice Mayor
item
Wood.
number 2, and it's, A and B is Unit 310 and Unit
Oh, I
311.
went one too far, sorry.
It's easy to do, there's a lot of them in there.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you very much, I'm sorry.
We're waiting on you.
I'm sorry, I know, yeah, I was on the wrong
You were
application.
judiciously going through the pages.
Barbara Messner is the next speaker.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate Mr. Jones doing the work that planning should be doing. All 13 of these are approved, and if I'm not mistaken, I think that one's near the Harris Teeter, because parking is impossible in that area. And these are high-density projects, and people, you know, these should be regulated. You shouldn't be able to rent them. You're building apartments and condos that people can rent out and use for, they live in Chesapeake, that's not local. And two of these, you know, like I said, there's major problems with these. Parking problems, and why are we even considering it when we have no idea? Our kids can't go to school, but you're bringing in people from all over the different areas. Can you imagine what it's like in a hotel, going up a hotel? There's no way people can social distance. And the hotel should be restricted, and these short-term rentals should not be discussed until the COVID situation is addressed. And I would greatly appreciate, I went to the planning meeting. I don't think any of y'all attended the planning meeting, town hall meeting, and I think that's another thing. Instead of having retreats for y'all, you know, Miss Henley's the only one that has town hall meetings. So I think a town hall meeting so we can speak and ask questions and have response, because the planning people, they don't listen to the people when they complain. And if it's at all possible, that teeny little light, I don't know how many people can see it, but people should walk over there with a stick and point to the areas instead of that little laser light. So I'm in opposition to all of these, and I hope Mrs. Henley will mention the problems we have with enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers.
Okay, Mr. Tower.
Go ahead and unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move approval of this application with appropriate changes to the conditions, and those are in item 4, 12, and 15 to reflect a limitation of the number of overnight guests to 2 per bedroom, and a limitation to the number of rentals to 1 during any consecutive 7-day period. If I've missed anything, perhaps Mr. Tahan will take a look, or Mr. Stiles, but I see 4, 12, and 15 would come into play.
Some add-ons there that, for clarification. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, if we can move forward.
Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Bellucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
With Mr. Towers' amendment, aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Aye. Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
He stepped
Just
out.
stepped out, so he's absent. And then Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By vote of 9 to 1, you have approved the application as amended.
Okay. All right. Approved number 2. Okay, moving on to item, planning, item 3, Alan Prince, conditional use permits for a short-term rentals at 525 21st Street, Unit A and Unit B, Beach District.
The applicant is participating virtual. Alan Prince. Mr. Prince, if you would pause 2 to 3 seconds before beginning your comments.
Good evening, council. Can you hear me okay? Good evening, council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Mr. Prince, please, we can hear you fine. Just begin your comments, please.
Hi, my name's Alan Prince. I'm the owner of 525 21st Street, Unit A and Unit B. I live here locally in Virginia Beach. I am about 12 to 15 minutes away from the property. Just like to take a minute to let you know the importance to us, our respect for our neighbors. Our number one house rule that we have is 0 to minimal outdoor noise after 9:30 p.m. I have 5 cameras on the exterior of the property, 2 on the front and 3 on the back unit that allow me to anytime after 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, if I have motion sensors that will alert me, I can check in, see what the noise levels are, shut anything down immediately if need be. I have great relationships with all my neighbors, including cutting the grass of my neighbor next to me. We've worked long and hard to get this property, and we're very excited to have it as a successful short-term rental. And we know the only way to do that is by respecting our neighbors and making sure that everyone, our guests as well as our neighbors, are happy. I really appreciate your consideration on all this, and I'll look forward to hearing the comments.
The next speaker is Barbara Messner.
Okay. This is a beach district again, Mr. Tower's district, and Mr. Tower, beginning of due process, has never replied to one email. He's my district person. Just because somebody wants to do this properly doesn't mean that we don't have too many of them. And people who are voting no on a few of them, including Ms. Abbott, you've made comments that we have to take care of the property owner and these people have already invested. What about the investment of the people who've lived here for 20, 30, 40 years and live in residential neighborhoods, and they want to know who their neighbors are? They don't want people coming and going. like I said, this should not be considered. It's not COVID-related, and, you know, we have major restrictions. So, there's too many. A lot of people can't come. You know, I don't like coming this often. But, you know, I'm very familiar with the area. And, you know, there is no parking. Traffic is a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. Other than Mr. Jones, how many of y'all go and talk to all the neighbors before you vote? It's obvious that planning is appointed by council and that it's for revenue. You know, they do push these things through, just like the callers told you. You know, city just wants the taxes. It should have just been taking care of the Sandbridge people instead of taking over the short-term rentals for taxes. I think people should rent yearly or 6 months, and I think these short-term rentals are an absolute nightmare and should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay, Mr. Tower.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move approval of this application with appropriate amendments, and I believe the conditions on this one are in items 5, 13, and 16 to reflect conditions that reduce the number of people allowed per bedroom from 3 to 2, and to reduce the number of permitted rentals in a consecutive 7-day period from 2 to 1.
In a second, any discussion? Okay.
Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
No.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 9 to 2.
Madam
Yeah,
Clerk,
Madam Clerk.
Yep.
I've decided to change my vote on that. I'm gonna vote aye.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So by a vote of 10 to 1, you have approved the application as amended.
Okay, moving on to Planning 4, Mission Enterprises LLC, conditional use permit, Ray short-term rental at 517 Virginia Beach Boulevard, Beach District.
Mayor, the applicant, I do not have anyone signed up representing the applicant. So if there's anyone here in the audience,
Anybody here for item 4, Mission Enterprises LLC? Okay, next speaker.
Barbara Messner.
Okay, Beach District again.
Beach.
Beach. Mission Enterprises, short-term rental,
Yes.
517 Virginia Beach Boulevard. Okay. I drive at the beach all the time. I know which ways to go to avoid some of the traffic. Sometimes you have to go to Bird Neck Road. In season, which you're trying to do year-round, you can't even move. Can you not do that, please?
I'm sorry.
Okay. I know.
Moving my leg?
Yeah, okay.
You want me to move my leg?
No, just quit swinging while I'm talking, thank you. Everybody else has been super. Okay, I'm glad y'all think it's funny. I'm here speaking for some of the people who can't show up and who are neighbors and who don't want to have fights with these people who are their neighbors, or people have been threatened by people who rent. You have no idea who's renting. And Mr. Jones changing his mind, I think the changes, how can you change something after the fact, Mr. Tower? You know, at one time he was reading, you know, that there's no events, not low volume or whatever, but there's no events allowed. I think all this needs to be put in every single time, that there's no events. And most of these are, people can rent twice a week. Two times a week you have new people coming in. That's not fair to the neighbors. Yeah, they didn't bother to show up, but, like I said, this is another one at the Beach District, and who is it? Even Nancy Parker, she's spoken out, but you have all the roads blocked so people can't get in and out. There's restricted parking signs. Between certain hours is the only time you can park. So it's not Old Beach, it's Virginia Beach, that was just created. So I'm opposed to all of these, and I don't think anybody should vote until you go talk to the neighbors and look at it and try to drive, when it's a busy season. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay, Mr. Tower.
For the record, I have talked to neighbors and I have looked at it. This is a mixed-use building in the Vibe District. The ground floor is, I think, currently being used for storage. It was at one time in auto parts. This is a rental of the second floor of this building that's been in existence on 17th Street since 1950. The owners are quite responsible people, and I think will enhance the property values and the attractiveness of the Vibe District, and I'm confident it will be a well-run operation. And I move its approval with the amendments that I previously outlined, reducing the number of permitted guests to 2 per bedroom and the number of permitted rentals to 1 per week.
Mr. Moss.
I just have a question. Mr. Tower, I assume you, since the applicant is not here tonight, I assume you have spoken with the applicant and the terms that you've expressed as amendments tonight were agreeable to them. Is that correct?
No, Mr. Moss, that's not correct. I'm doing, and I wish I had, but I was not prepared to do that before I spoke up this afternoon. I've been struggling with that issue. So I'm not certain that they would go forward with that limitation, but I can't in good conscience not impose it or suggest that it be imposed.
Since the applicant is not here, generally when we make conditions and stuff, they are here. Maybe we can, I just want to know that we aren't running afoul that since the applicant's not here. Does that have any bearing? Can we go ahead and prove if they don't like it, then they just don't get the conditional use permit? I'm just trying to make certain.
They don't have to consent to the condition. You generally do, when the applicant is here, get their agreement, their buy-in, but it's not legally required.
Thank you very much. I want to applaud Mr. Tower's effort to get us to where we hope we get to go, which is 1 a week and 2 to a bedroom. So I do appreciate all your heavy lifting there, Mr. Tower.
Yeah, and I think we're moving in that direction. Okay. All right, we have a motion, second. Okay, any other discussion?
You ready for the vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 10 to 1, you have approved the application as amended.
Okay, moving forward to Planning 5, Janet Mourinho for conditional use permit, short-term rental at 951 Maryland Avenue, District 6, Beach.
We did not have the applicant sign up. So is Ms. Marino in the audience? The only speaker is Barbara Messner.
Okay. This is another one for Mr. Towers' district. Mr. Towers interested in revenue and the Vibe district. I'm glad he mentioned that. 517 Virginia Beach Boulevard. You know, the city's trying to make everything pedestrian. The Vibe district is moving all of the commercial and quote-unquote entertainment and alcohol, breweries, etc., further back where a lot of the low-income people, you know, if you care about low-income people, a lot of the people that lived back there were very low-income people, including over where the sports center's going, and where the Tidewater Veterans Memorial is. You know, like I said last time, it's flooded. Everything's flooded over there. That's a sacred resting place. The Vibe district is taxpayer subsidized. Your tax dollars, my tax dollars, matched by the state. You know, like I said, you know, y'all just write checks and we have debt. You're approving this because you're not responsible. Wait one sec. I wish you could have the large monitor, but the small one will do. Okay, we need to stop corporate welfare. We need to abolish Economic Development Authority. It creates debt. You move property to the Economic Development Authority. You appoint them. We pay for their high rent at town center. You know, and the statue I'd like to see gone is the king of nepotism to the bottom of the sea. And, you know, like I said, I oppose these. These people aren't even here. They just assume it'll be approved, just like the calls that Ms. Abbott got. And there isn't parking. There isn't enough police. There aren't enough people to take care of all these. If you're in a hotel, you know, you're responsible. You're on site and you have some security most of the time. But there's no security for these places and there's no security for the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay. Mr. Tower, how you doing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the approval of this application. It's in Shadow Lawn on Maryland Avenue, and with the changes in items, conditions 4, 12, and 14, I believe. No, 4, 12, and 15, to reduce the number of permitted guests per bedroom to 2, and the number of permitted rentals per week to 1.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Abbott?
May I ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Before we vote? These dots, the blue dots and the yellow dots and the gray dots that are on the sheet here, they represent other short-term rentals that are already surrounding this unit. Is that correct, Mr. John?
That is correct, Mr. Jones. The dark blue dots represent those that have been approved for a conditional use permit. The grayish dot is considered a registered property that was registered prior to July 2018.
All right. And nobody showed up to object, is that right?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Okay.
Ready for the vote?
Yep.
Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley?
No.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson? Aye. Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 10 to 1, you have approved the application as amended.
All right, moving on to item number 7. Okay, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry, number 6. It's HMC LLC Min Vong at conditional use permit short-term rental at 4669 Merrimack Lane in Bayside.
The applicant, I believe, is Joe Nimbo. Are they speaking? That's who I have registered to come up and speak. What's your name, ma'am? Okay, I didn't have a card for you. Come on up and state your name to the, for the record.
Welcome.
Welcome, thank you. I'm Rosemary Cawley, and I've been working on behalf of Mr. Minvo, who's the owner of this townhouse over in the Bayside area of the city. And he acquired the property in late December of 2019 and has followed the rules, and he's kept it vacant all this time while following, meeting with the planning people and putting together his operational plan and submitting all the documents, forms, and fees and whatnot. So he's planning to work with the Airbnb program, where they do have strict rules and guidelines to follow. And so far, we haven't had, because it's not being rented, in previous properties that I've worked with, they've been able to rent it out at least to 2 parties or 2 separate groups per week. So, all this is very well planned out, and he's prepared to do what is necessary in order to operate his Airbnb according to the city's guidelines and rules.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Moss?
Are you the property manager for the
No,
applicant?
no, I can't call myself a property manager because I don't handle any of the finances and I don't do any of the contracts or leases or anything like that. I just help, I work with his brother on another property that has been operating as a short-term rental, again, kind of over in the Newtown Road area. And I communicate through online, through the Airbnb system. And we screen the guests based on our criteria as well as Airbnb criteria. And then we have a self-check-in method. And we have our rules and guidelines posted in the unit as well as online. And then I also address all those items in a welcome message. So the guests are well versed on what is expected of them as our guest. And so far, we've been very fortunate in not having any disruptions or any neighbors' complaints.
Like the property's not operating, so does the owner live in the city limits?
Yes, oh,
Okay,
yes.
I'm just trying to understand who's responding when you said you weren't the property manager. Thank you.
Well, I would be the contact person, but, if the guests have if something is broken or whatever, I've been and
So you are the person
I'll
that
assess,
responds.
yeah, I'll assist his brother in the same manner.
Right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Okay,
bye-bye.
thank you.
I have a question.
Mr.
Ma'am?
Jones, excuse me,
Ma'am?
ma'am, if you can come back.
Sure.
Mr. Jones has a question.
Sure, Mr. Jones.
Where do you live?
Here in Virginia Beach.
In Virginia Beach?
Mm-hmm.
How far are you from this unit?
Probably 20 minutes,
20 minutes?
yes.
And how many other units are you handling for Mr. Vaughn?
Just one.
Just this one or another?
No, his brother, Joe, has one. And it's probably only 10 minutes, 5 minutes from the one that's being reviewed.
And has it been rented?
No.
He just bought it though?
He bought it in December, and because of the new guidelines that were established last fall, I believe, he's been adhering to all those completely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I have one more question.
Oh, yeah.
If I could, ma'am, just one more question. I know you've been listening tonight to a number of the applications that we've been reviewing, and I noticed in your discussion or presentation, you mentioned 2 per week rentals. I think you said that?
Yes, that's it, but they're short, because it's not an oceanfront property, the type of guests that are attracted to that location are a little bit different, are actually quite a bit different. These people will go to the beach, but that's not why they're here. They're here to visit family, or they're here to attend an event, or visit one of their military person. We have a lot of those, and so they're really not so-called party oriented. It's to visit and just enjoy the area, learn about the area, things like that.
You also heard about 2 per bedroom?
I'm sorry?
2 per bedroom, and that has nothing to do with the ocean front?
Yeah, the one that I'm working with is a 2-master suite, so yes, we have a maximum of six people that we can accommodate in the unit.
So you would not be interested in reducing that to 2 persons per bedroom?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you.
No.
Okay. All right.
The next speaker is Barbara Messner.
One thing I brought up when I attended the planning meeting is the fact, I think I've seen one sign on, I believe it was Baltic Avenue, where they let people know that it was a rental. And I think all of these should have a sign out front with, that says short-term rental, Airbnb. It's not like the one at Croatan that's, far back behind the trees. But it needs to be visible. People need to know. And these are obviously investment properties. All the money we gave to Pharrell to promote something in the water, he goes on TV and he tells everybody, get into the Airbnb business, use your property. I mean, we're not going to have anything left. For normal people, you're just spreading it out everywhere. The event companies, people aren't, having events at the hotels as much, or the really nice event companies. These people are using it for events. And just because somebody, it's not on the water, doesn't mean they're not here for the beach or to party. You can't say why people are coming here. And if they're not on the premises and they don't plan to live there, I think we need to stop letting people just buy investments and turn our entire city into a commercial venue for taxes. We're taxed enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Mr. Jones?
I'd like to ask the lady another question, if I may.
Yeah, if you can come to the podium, thank you.
Would Mr. Vaughn, is it Vaughn? Is that what it is?
Vo.
Would Mr. Vaughn be agreeable to one rental contract per week and no more than 2 individuals per bedroom?
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vaughn, are you in agreement with that?
Okay. I think we got the thumbs up.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, are there any other speakers?
No, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I move approval subject to item 12 under the conditions being changed to read that there's no more than one rental contract during any consecutive 7-day period, and item 15 under the conditions to read the maximum number of persons on the property after 11 p.m. and before 7 a.m. overnight lodges shall be 2 individuals per bedroom.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and the second with the modifications. Okay, any other discussion? Vote?
Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley, as she has left. She left, right?
Yes,
Thank
correct.
you. Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye, and I assume, Mr. Jones, that you also would make a appropriate change in condition number 4, where it refers to the number of bedrooms times 3. That would change also to number of bedrooms times 2.
Explicitly state the number, that's what Mr. Tower is doing.
I'm not following you, Mr. Tower.
Two per bedroom. Two per bedroom.
I've already said.
That was the
Yes,
motion.
but there's a specific item conditioned as a number that has the algorithm expression in it, and he just wants to make sure that they're
Okay.
consistent.
Yes, I'll agree to that.
Yes, okay.
Councilmember Wilson? Aye. Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 10-0, you've approved the application as amended.
Okay, moving on to item number 7. Erika Atkins and Melvin Atkins, the third conditional use permit, raise short-term rentals at 598 Pinewood Drive, units 203, 208, Beach District.
The first speaker is John Richardson.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is John Richardson. I'm a local attorney. I represent the applicant in this matter. This is a building at the ocean front on Baltic Avenue, as you can see, or the corner of Pinewood and Baltic. It was a motel when it began life, and about 15 years ago, some folks came to me to convert it to condominiums, so I filed the declaration of bylaws to do that. The declaration of bylaws provide that you can rent no more than once per 7 days, so certainly that condition is acceptable. These are one-bedroom units. 2 people is certainly an acceptable condition to us. But this is within walking distance of the ocean and certainly lends itself well to the intended use as a short-term rental. The applicants live in Virginia Beach. They're about 10 minutes away from the property. Mrs. Atkins, who is here, Mr. Atkins is also here. They both are quick to respond. Ms. Atkins does not work other than to manage these properties. This is her only job. They have other properties on the Outer Banks that she manages as well. They limit their applicant pool to 25 years of age. They have posted rules of the house in the house itself. They're very scrupulous in who they rent to. There's a letter of recommendation in the file from the vice president of the association. He lives right below their unit. And then there's also a letter of recommendation from another resident who lives next door to this unit. So they're careful about who they rent to, and they are very quick to respond if there are any issues. They have a minute system installed, which is a noise sensor. So if the noise level rises above a certain level, they can respond. So they're very, very hands-on owner-operators.
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer.
Ms. Atkins, did you want to make comments as well?
You pretty much covered everything that I can recommend. Any questions that are
I just had you signed up. I just wasn't sure if you wanted to make comments. Okay, thank you. Ms. Messner is the next and last speaker.
Did Ms. Kinley leave for the evening?
She did, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it is getting pretty late. Okay, and I appreciate the fact, that a lot of these people are investment and this is their income. But it doesn't negate the fact that no one can guarantee how many people are gonna be in there and how many guests they have. And I don't think it was really clear when Mr. Tower said something about changing it from 11 to 10. I think we should have peaceful enjoyment all hours. There shouldn't be any, loud music or events. And I think these restrictions should be for all the rentals, not just some that have opposition. And talking about 25 and up, if you look at, the problems we're having, a lot of these people aren't teenagers. A lot of them are, 18 to 30. And there are a lot of, quote, adults that do nothing but party. So, I'm opposed to these, and since I'm here, I'm gonna speak out, and, everyone who, allows this if there's any party where people get sick, or who knows where these people are coming from. You've never had any restrictions on who can stay in the hotels. And now Northern wants to go back to, more restrictions. You can't even go to a store without seeing a giant stop, put on a mask. You listen to these speakers, don't lower your mask. Governor Northam says this. This is a crazy time we're living in. We don't need to add to it by not knowing who our neighbors are and having our neighborhoods turned into rental opportunities, So I'm in opposition. Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay. Mr. Tower, long time no hear from. How you doing?
I'm fine, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for inquiring. I'm getting better every minute. Could I ask a question to Mr. Richardson? Would he mind coming back to the podium?
Good evening, Mr. Tower. How are you?
I'm fine, Mr. Richardson. How are you doing? I noticed that there were several letters of opposition to this. I don't know that anybody appeared at the planning commission, but apparently they got some letters. I just want to give you a chance to comment on them.
She withdrew her opposition to the application, but we're unaware of the other letter writers. We know the vice president of the association has written a letter in favor and is a neighbor of this particular unit, as is the other letter writer who wrote in favor.
The report from the planning department says there were 3 letters of opposition, which is that maybe Mr. Tahan could speak to that.
Mr. Tower, there was one speaker at the Planning Commission public hearing that spoke in opposition with concerns of on-site security and poor lighting of the existing condominium in general. The letters of opposition also noted the similar concerns as well.
So the comments really didn't go to the relationship between any particular person or persons in the unit, just said that the entire complex needed some better lighting. Is that right?
Referred to short-term rentals and the potential for excessive noise and traffic, and pedestrian and vehicular traffic onto the site.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Tower?
Approval of this with the amendments that I've made earlier this evening in conditions 4, 13, and 16. I'm sorry, 5, 13, and 16 in this particular one, to reduce the number of persons per bedroom to 2 and the number of rentals per week to 1.
Okay, great. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, discussion? Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Abbott. Aye. Councilmember Berlucci.
Aye.
Councilmember Henley has left. Councilmember Jones.
Aye.
Councilmember Moss.
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Tower.
Aye.
Member Wilson. Aye. Councilmember Wooten. Aye. Vice Mayor Wood.
Aye.
Mayor Dyer.
Aye.
By a vote of 10-0, you have approved the application as amended.
You can't make things in virtual meetings up, I'll tell you. All righty, moving on to item number 8, Emily Perdonson and Dennis Smith for conditional use permit, raise short-term rentals at 2306 Oak Street, Lynn Haven.
The applicant, Dennis Smith. Then after Mr. Smith, the only other speaker is Barbara Messner.
Welcome.
Hello. Good evening. I just have a short statement my wife prepared. So my wife and I purchased our house on Oak Street in 2018 with every intention to remain in this home for the foreseeable future. Due to an unforeseen upheaval with the cardiology practice that my wife joined here, she has made a temporary move to Emory University in Atlanta for 2 years of additional training while she waits for a non-compete contract to expire. As such, we plan to use the house as a rental property until she returns to Virginia and starts working again locally. Having a seasonal rental permit would give us flexibility with the home and still allow us to use and enjoy it while receiving some rental income to cover our expenses. We have been outstanding homeowners in the neighborhood since our original move in 2018 and will continue to do so, even as a seasonal rental. Our property will be used and run appropriately per the rules and regulations of the Virginia Beach and also with respect to our wonderful neighbors in the Shore Drive community. We will be using Atkinson Realty as our property manager and will abide by all rules set forth by the city. We understand and respect the community's desire to keep the neighborhood family friendly and have no intention of renting the property to large parties. We will not be renting to anyone under the age of 25 to avoid unauthorized house parties. Parking will not be an issue as we have a large wraparound driveway that easily accommodates 3 cars away from the street. We have a zero tolerance policy on excessive noise, unauthorized guests, unauthorized parking, unauthorized smoking, or other disruptive behaviors. And we also don't plan on using this until next summer as we have a year lease already with a family that moved in.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wood.
Thanks, and that answers part of the question, I guess. And I think it's great that you acknowledge that your wife wrote that for you. I mean, we all need to do that sometimes.
I know who the boss is.
So I assume you'd be okay then with items 4, 12, and 15, modification to 2 per bedroom and 1 per 7 days then?
Yeah, I mean, we were going to go with whatever Atkinson says, so that probably would not be a problem.
So you're okay with that?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, thank you.
The next speaker is Barbara Messner.
This is so obviously investment. Atkinson Realty, can you imagine how much, I mean, if they're renting it for 1 year, why don't they rent it for another year? It's just greed. Just because they're going to be caring about their own property doesn't mean it's not an investment. And, you know, if they're gone for, if she's going to be gone for 2 years, they can rent it for 6 months or a year. Atkinson Realty is the reason most people can't live at the north end. It's been summer, winter for decades. There hasn't been affordable rental property there, and that's when it was just summer rental, which was, it used to be Memorial Day to Labor Day. We used to have actual, official season. So, I'm just in opposition to the investment property, and I think people could rent for 6 months or a year, and, these short-term rentals should be discontinued, at least, until we can have people to take care of it, and 311, and not use our police to take care of this, because if there's problems, the people who come over to take care of it 20, 30 minutes away, whatever, they still have to call the police. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay, Mr. Wood.
Move approval with the same modifications, items 4, 12, and 15, changing it to 2 per bedroom and 1 contract per 7 days.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley? Oh, she's absent. Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Aye. Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 10-0, you've approved the application as amended.
Okay, moving on to item number 9, Jeffrey Whiteside for conditional use permit short-term rental of 131 South Thalia Road, Glen Haven.
The applicant is appearing virtually. Melissa Whiteside. Ms. Whiteside, if you would pause 2 to 3 seconds before beginning your comments. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Go ahead and begin your comments, please.
The short-term rental before in his home when he was away, and I managed it. I live here in Virginia Beach, and it was registered, paid taxes, everything. We ran a very quality program once when he was away from home, and when he came back home, then he lived in the home. But when he was away, we did rent it out, and I did run it. Um, and like I said, it was quality. We talked to all our neighbors. We managed it, controlled everything. So we didn't have the police or complaints. We had security cameras, sound devices, and I watched the cameras as people check in to count how many were there. I was on top of everything. So once he sold that home, then he moved into his new home, and when he's out of town, he wanted to do the same thing. So, and I do manage it, and it's the quality that I'm concerned about, because we are family people, and we do live here, and we want to make sure our neighbors are okay with everything we're doing. So, we've even put guests out as they were coming in. They had too many people. They were beginning to violate the rules. And so we stopped it and canceled the reservation right away, and they left in no incident or anything. So I think they can be ran quality, and they have to be watched consistently. And that's what I do. Watch the cameras, watch them, listen. Neighbors, if they have any problems, they always have our number to call. This was when we were running our other one in his home. And like I said, once he sold that home and decided to do it again, we went through the proper channels. We've never run anything illegally. We've always registered. But since we sold that home, we had to go through the process again because we would have been grandfathered in, but we sold that home. So we're starting the process again. So when he is away from home, he can take rentals. But when he's home, he doesn't take them.
Yeah, Mr. Moss.
Yes, are you renting the property now?
My son is home, and he's in his property, and we're law-abiding citizens, so we are waiting for the permit. The sign is in the yard. We changed the date. We communicated with our planning person. So no, we're just waiting for approval. He just got married a year ago. His wife is here now. She just came into town. So honestly, he's not really we're going to get the permit, but he probably won't be renting it out until he has to leave again. So we just want the permit just in case we decide to take a rental a weekend here or there.
On your use of technology.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, thank you very much. Next speaker.
Barbara Messner.
Okay, this is Oak Street in the Lynn Haven area, correct?
Not Oak Street.
Pardon, no, this one is Thalia, right? Thalia Road?
Yeah.
That is correct.
Right, okay. And, you know, that's pretty far inland to be having short-term rentals. And I'm sure you're aware that you're having a special planning meeting or a special meeting for the Thalia residents because they're fighting, you know, one of the huge mixed-use developments over there they've been fighting for quite a while. So this area, you know, should not be used for short-term rentals. I don't think any of them should be used for short-term rentals and investment property. But I thought she said people already were renting there and they weren't appropriate and they asked them to leave. So it's really confusing who's renting ahead of time and who isn't. So, since I'm here and I've stayed this long, I'm going to speak out in opposition to these. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Mr. Wood?
I've got a couple of questions and concerns about this one. Is Mr. Tahan still here? Yeah. I know I asked you this question before, and just, was there not a BZA variance on this? Because a lot of these in this area, when they've been torn down and rebuilt, have gotten BZA variances.
For this particular property, there was no Board of Zoning Appeals variance granted for this.
All right, and the width of the garage, it looks, can you go to the photo of that? It looks really small on here. When I drove by, it looked kind of small too. So it's just barely a one-car garage, it looks like.
Yes, sir, but it does meet the minimum dimensional standards.
I understand that, but it's just barely a one-car garage. All right, so no BZA variance and a one-car garage. Okay, that was my question. And I'm kind of struggling with this one, folks, because it's not in a traditional area, as Ms. Messner said. I drive by this every day, and there's very little parking available on that street if there's an overflow. I know that they put the car in there for illustration purposes. I've driven by, there's 2 cars in the driveway, and I actually called Mr. Tahan and said, there are 2 cars currently in the driveway, and he said, send me a photo, and I sent him a photo, and they confirmed that they were in fact the folks that owned it, that were there. So I get that, but there's not really any other room. Can you get the applicant back on?
Yes, we can unmute her. Ms. Whiteside, go ahead and unmute her. Ms. Whiteside, Vice Mayor Wood has some questions for you.
So I'm concerned with the number of bedrooms advertised, and because of the fact that there's no parking, and you've also got frankly, an undersized garage, would you be willing to reduce your rental to a 2-bedroom?
Now, I was told that as long as we had parking for 3 cars, which there's no street parking, so we hadn't planned on parking on the street. The 1 car in the garage and 2 in the driveway. My son and his wife are there now, that our parking was appropriate.
Willing to reduce it to 2 bedrooms?
And can you tell me why we're reducing it to 2 bedrooms?
Have sufficient parking space there. And that, my motion would be to approve it with that condition, but if y'all aren't agreeable to it, then that's fine.
So that means that we would only be able to rent out 2 bedrooms when he's not there.
Yes.
Would you be agreeable to that condition?
If I have to talk to my son about it, would that hold us up? Or if I agree, then you're saying that we can go through with it? How long would it hold us up if I have to talk to him? He couldn't make it tonight because his wife had an emergency.
Defer it then, if we want to defer it 30 days.
Or till the next meeting?
Next meeting's pretty busy. So.
Yep.
All right, so Mr. Mayor, I move that we defer this for 30 days.
Second. Motion for deferral in a second. Any other discussion? Oh, yes, Mr. Rouse.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My only question, and I understand what Councilman Wood is talking about parking, but if parking, the available parking is approved in the ordinance and there's no on-street parking, I'm just trying to understand where's the...
I'm happy to answer that. I've been fairly consistent in my disagreement with utilizing garages for this, particularly when they're undersized like that. And, having watched all these houses go up, I mean, they're building them very small with very small garages just to have them. And I understand they're clear and open when planning goes through and do that, but that's essentially all the storage in that house is that garage. So and realistically, it's not going to be available, in my opinion, for people to park. There's no other parking around there. And again, that's a main road going through, and if you look, go to the street picture if you could, Howard. Go to the other one. This is a better one. Keep going. Yep, go back, right there. So if you see there, they built all of these units along this street, and you can see the width of the driveways, and you can see like you've got just a little green spot right there where, in theory, if you had like a smart car or something, you could park in front of that mailbox. But otherwise, but you know, there's a fire hydrant and there's all these things. There's no place to park on the street. And, you know, when I drove by and took a look at it, you know, the width of that driveway is kind of deceptive. It looks like it's a pretty wide driveway. There were 2 cars in it, and they were, you know, filling up the driveway. So my concern is if you've got 3 bedrooms and 3 cars, you're not going to have room for 3 cars.
Well, and I'm looking at this picture here as well, and I know we're speaking on this property, but the one beside it looks like it has a truck in their garage. And if you go back, can you go back 2 slides? They do have a car in that garage. And so, I mean,
I'm sure that was taken for this purpose, though.
it's a small car, but I guess what do you say?
That car was the one in the driveway when I drove by.
I guess they were, you know, they're showing that that's available parking as well. I guess my only issue is the fact that if we're saying, you know, 3 bedrooms, 3 cars, and they've shown that there's extra available parking in the garage, I'm having a hard time understanding why that. Now I can see if they didn't have a garage and they're saying we have 3 bedrooms and the garage was unavailable, but here it looks like the garage is available. Not to mention the fact that you do have a very responsive homeowner who've even stated they have, you know, video cameras and whatnot, and they kick people out. Even if they show up with too many people, they cancel the reservations right away. So I'm just.
Well, and I'll be honest, I've been struggling with whether or not to even vote to approve it at all. I mean, you know.
I mean, that's the condition you set forth. That's up for the applicant to whether it's accepted or not. I'm just trying to understand how the consistency in approaching this.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I mean, you know, we've done this on a couple of the other ones too,
Yeah.
where we've reduced the number of bedrooms and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
so for me in this particular case, it's just because I've driven by and it's given me, you know, concern every time I drive by and see the orange sign. I just keep thinking about how is that going to work, and so I mean that's it. That's why I think if we get the deferral for 30 days, you know, they can talk about it and everybody on council can get an opportunity to drive by and take a look at it and see what they think.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rouse. We got a motion for a deferral for 30 days in a second, okay?
Did we have a second?
Yes.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, no other discussion?
So the deferral will be until September 1st.
Whatever day. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Abbott?
Aye.
Councilmember Berluci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley's absent. Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember Moss?
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 10 to 0, you've approved, you have deferred this application, God, until September 1st. I know, sorry.
Okay, final item 10,
Dinner that.
Justice Swango and JAG Investments for conditional use permit, 521 Carolina Avenue. Mr. Swango.
Mr. Swango, the first speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Members of council. My name is Jason Swango. My daughter is the applicant, Justice Swango. I own the property. I own JAG Investments. JAG Investments is a, if you will, a holding company for a few properties that I own. I'm actually an attorney here in Virginia Beach. I owned a law firm called The Firm for Men. Many of you may have heard of. I am very familiar with, I currently live in Great Neck. I live on the Lynn Haven River, back behind Cox High School. I do have 3 rentals in Shadowlawn. I take that back. I have 2 rentals in Shadowlawn. My daughter owns a property at 435 Carolina That's 4 houses from the current property of 521 Carolina in question today. I also own a property that my father resides in, three blocks away in the 800 block of Delaware. This is our family community. I moved here from Indiana in 2001. I actually couldn't get here because 9/11 had happened. And so we finally were able to get here in October. I came here making $12 an hour. There are some of you that understand and know probably my plight and the reason why I'm here. With me today is my beautiful wife of 25 years, India Swango, along with my daughter, Justice. We had a pretty tough time, obviously, coming here, and we've done a very good job, and we've been quite blessed. I've been a part of this community now, as I said, since 2001. I've attended Wave Church almost since that time. I've been there for nearly 24 years. You know, I keep hearing about the community, the community, the community. Again, I want to reiterate that the reason why we bought this house was my wife and I are planning to downsize. As I mentioned, we've been pretty fortunate. We were looking at a place in the Shadowlawn area so that we could keep all of our family together. The uniqueness of Shadowlawn is such that everyone tends, at least in these particular blocks, everyone tends to walk around and be a part of the community. That's something that I was accustomed to when I lived in Indiana in a much smaller community than Virginia Beach. I'm asking the council, and before I ask the council for all your votes, I did want to thank you as well for the motion to rehear. Obviously, we had some technical difficulties, and I understand that the council voted 11-0, so I thank each member of the council. When when we were actually here in, I guess it was in June, we were trying to, in essence, Skype in, if you will, and had those technical difficulties. Some of the questions that the council had, I wanted to go ahead and answer, but before I did, I wanted to thank the 4 members of council who voted in favor, even without being able to hear the answers to the questions that some of the other members were asking. So I would like to thank Council Member Wooten and Council Member Rouse, Council Member Tower, and Councilwoman Abbott for your votes. With that said, I just want to address a couple issues that the other people who didn't vote had. One of the issues that was raised was whether or not that this was going to be a short-term rental, or my intent was for it to be a short-term rental. My intent when I bought this house was for it to be, as I said, a downsize for the home that we're living in now as we begin to start the retirement process. As you all know, the housing market continues to increase. Specifically in the Shadowlawn area, it's gone up quite a bit. I purchased a 2-bedroom, 1-bath for like $260,000, and now you can't buy that same house for $360,000, $370,000. So we, even as blessed as we are getting kind of priced out of the area, and so that's why we decided to make that purchase. My daughter would be involved in assisting in managing the rental itself. She is the director of corporate compliance at my law firm. She is an auditor like nothing you've ever seen. She is a product of our Virginia Beach public schools. She attended the IB program at Princess Anne, was a 4-time state qualifier in the sport of basketball, was a 2-time state champion, and was ranked number 18 in the nation by ESPN. Went on to be a 3-time college captain and attended Georgetown University. So you have someone that's very responsible that is managing my personal property. I can assure you that this isn't going to be rented out all the time, obviously, because me and my wife want to use this as a way to be around our family. I mentioned my father's 3 blocks away. My mother-in-law is actually a block away, as well as my daughter, as I said, is 4 houses away. I do, during the last meeting, there was an issue about whether or not, when we poured the parking, what had actually happened with the permit. As you all, I'm sure, are aware that hiring good contractors, at least out here, is quite a challenge from time to time. We had hired a contractor at my daughter's house that was supposed to provide some electrical services and get a permit, and we found out that he didn't do that, and obviously, we're going to have to seek legal remedies against him. So I decided to take measures into my own hands because I'm a law-abiding citizen, obviously, as an officer of the court, as an attorney here in Virginia Beach. So I decided to hire an agent that would go down to the city and take a permit out in my name so that I can ensure that everything was being followed the way that it needed to be. When we walked away, apparently they had forgot to put the parking, although they give us everything that we had to do to qualify for the parking. They actually wanted us to pour more concrete. I told them that that wasn't necessary for my personal needs, that I was doing this for us. My beautiful wife has given me 6 children. And so I think it was Miss Wooten or Miss Abbott had mentioned in the first meeting that maybe this person just has a lot of kids and they don't want to be parking on the street. You hit it spot on. Both of you did. That's exactly why I poured the amount of spaces that we could, is because I have 5 vehicles. I have 1 child now that's moved out, but we have 4 more at home that are starting to get their licenses and permits. So I needed this so that I can maintain the integrity of my family as we begin the process of moving into the Shadowlawn area ourselves. When we poured the slab, they poured it straight on. When the inspector came out, and he said, "Well, I don't see this on the permit." And we're like, "Yeah, here's the plans that they gave us and showed us what we could do." And he said, "Well, you need to go back down to the city and get that put on your permit correctly. They didn't do it right." So we went down that day, got it put back on the permit, and they wanted us to cut a small little section off of what we had poured. Quite honestly, I didn't like it. I didn't think the aesthetics of it made a whole lot of sense, to be honest, but again, we followed all the rules. I've owned this property for quite some time, although it was under contract. Mr. Andros, who owned the property before, couldn't move out because of tax implications, so he had to stay there for 2 years so he wouldn't have to pay the additional tax as a resident. So I just held on and had him stay there. He still owned the house. I didn't buy it yet. Once we reached the 2-year mark, I ended up purchasing the property from him and began in essence, renovating the inside for me. I have put $100,000 of my own money into the inside of this house under the premise, obviously, that we were going to be staying there. In my efforts to talk with the other people there in the local community, and I am one of those, having 3 homes there within a 3-block area, one of the big complaints is that they're just tearing down properties there and building up these big 2-story homes. And part of the issue in the Shadowlawn is that the people really want to maintain somewhat of the integrity of the old-style properties. And so all 3 of my properties have continued to be single-family dwellings that are single-story. We have done no external renovation, if you will, except for new roofs and new siding and whatnot. But that's our story. That's why we're here. I've been a part of this community for a long time. I actually, when my office moved into Town Center, I don't say this to impress you, but to press upon you my commitment to this community. When we started the firm in Town Center, I raised $12,000 for the homeless, and I donated that money to 99 for the One, which is a local organization that helps individuals who actually are homeless and that are living actually, as strange as it may seem, on the railroads of our city here in Virginia Beach. We've done everything we can do. We haven't rented out the property at all. We followed all guidelines. I am eating $3,300 a month. I was in the hospital.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I really appreciate it. Yeah, Mr. Wood.
So I appreciate you coming in and
Yes,
talking
sir.
about that stuff. So when I look back and the staff gave me a copy of the building permit information because my concern was the driveway. So it looks like, based on this, you bought the house on September 22nd of 2019?
That sounds about right, sir.
Okay. And then there was a complaint filed on November 7th of 2020. And then.
Wait,
on-
November of 2020, but I don't think we've gotten to that point yet.
Sorry, November 7th.
Okay.
My bad. 2019.
Yep.
And then.
What was the nature of the complaint?
Complainant believes this is the correct address. They've dug up the front yard and was speaking with the landscapers. They indicating they're pouring concrete to cover up the front area. They're concerned this will change the look of the neighborhood, and we're told they do not have a permit. So then on,
But that's inaccurate. We did have a permit.
well, so 3 days later, I'm just telling you what I'm reading right
Sure.
here, okay? And let me try to find the date on this one. On November 12th, so 5 days later, y'all pulled a permit, and included in that permit was a $250 stop work order fee for having no permit. So that was in this document.
Yes, that's correct. When the inspector went out that day for the concrete, what we were given by the city, and I've heard you guys talk about the communication issues that we're having down in planning, but they had indicated to us that this was, this would be okay to do it this way, that you would be within these parameters. They give us dimensions on what would be allowable and what wouldn't be allowable. And so we went to do it.
Had a permit?
Right, so so they said we were good. We got the permit to do all the renovations for the house. We paid for all that stuff.
That permit you got on November 12th, right?
They didn't put the pavement for the front on the actual original permit was the problem.
Okay, so the only permit that is in the record is one that's dated November 12th, which is 5 days after the complaint. So
Okay.
you're saying you had one before then?
That's correct.
Do you
We never started construction on that property until there was a valid permit.
Mr. Tejon, can you clarify that? Because that was a concern of mine, because it looked like the work was done prior to that, and then the $250 stop work order, and also the value on here, because Mr. Swango said he spent $100,000 on it, and the value on this is showing $8,000, so maybe there's another permit, but I don't see it.
I think they may have missed a zero, Vice Mayor, because the actual renovations were going to be right around probably 80 to 86 roughly. So I don't know if they just missed a zero on the 8,000.
Charge enough, because you charge based.
And look, you guys can have whatever pound of flesh that you want, sir.
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
because they had listed as 8,000, and I'm just trying to figure it out, because when I go through this, and again, the concern was the massive width of the driveway cut back. The indication we got before from the staff was that it was done without a permit, and so I asked him for a copy of it.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at all that, and just that timeline that I gave you is just what I saw, that
Right.
showed complaint on 11/7, and then 5 days later, a permit was acquired, and the permit was for expanding existing driveway, interior alterations, removing non-load-bearing walls, and erecting walls. So it looks like this permit was for the interior stuff that was issued 5 days later, but you say there was a permit prior to that.
That's correct. There was a permit. And where the discrepancy is that there was three bathrooms in that house, but it really was 2.5 baths. So when we put the permit for the three, they only did they came back to us in essence and said, you have to pay for more. And we said, well, wait a minute, why are we paying for a third when we already had three baths? And they said, you have to pay for it because you're adding I think we were adding a shower in that particular bathroom to make it a full three.
That was done on December 10th, according to this. So, okay. I'm just, it's a little confusing to me.
Yeah.
Because
This whole process has been confusing to us as well. Even from getting the permits to what we're being told, just really the whole process is not easy
Yeah.
on the local constituents.
Okay, Mr. Tahan, can you bring some clarity?
Mr. Vice Mayor, it appears the applicant submitted plans or came into the office, or a representative came into the office on the date he noted. I have my staff from the Development Services Center that noted that did the AWWA calculations for his additions of
on what date was that?
I'm sorry, that was November 12th. So he He had come in the office, however, the permit was not issued till the date that you mentioned, which was November 15th. So they had come,
They came in the office on the 12th,
that is correct.
and the stop work order was on the 7th. Or the complaint was on the 7th.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
And again, these are, I gave you a copy of all the permit activity for the property, so that has all the dates and the stamps from the plan reviewers.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, any other questions at this?
And just for clarification, I'm not the one that went down to the city. It was an agent of ours on my behalf.
Was that Michael Adamov?
That's correct.
Yeah, so he went on the 12th, right.
Okay. Okay, anybody other questions at this point?
Are you ready for additional speakers?
Yes.
Does your daughter, does she want to make comments? She signed up as well.
I don't know, do you want to make any statements, sweetheart? Okay.
Okay.
Oh, the only thing that I would say is I do have a list. I know that you guys were going based off of Google Earth, and that was actually 4 years old on what you were looking at. So I took the liberty of going through the neighborhood and taking some photos, because I think one of the questions that the vice mayor had was, he said, well, it might be consistent with the community, as Mr. Rouse was pointing out, but he didn't think it was consistent with that street. Well, that's not the standard, is what I would say, number one. But what I would tell you is that it actually is the standard on the street as well. On Carolina, as a matter of fact, the property right across the street from me is 2 stories, has more pavement than I have, and can park 6 cars in their drive. But I have a list, or at least some photos for you guys to consider if it's necessary. If not, no problem. It was a small tree I killed.
I have additional speakers, sir. Are we
Okay.
ready for those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Three.
Okay.
Let me have a seat. The
Okay,
next
Jason.
speaker is
Thank
Barbara
you.
Messner.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Mr. Duhaney, this is a long night.
Yes.
I don't know what you're used to in Cincinnati, but I certainly hope that you will look into the fact of how much dialogue is given to these people and to city council, and how some people have rebuttals, but, I mean, that speech and what it related to and how much time it took had very little to do with the property. And another thing that I think is very important that you might be able to look into is the fact that I've been to planning meetings. I sat through 4.5 hours of one, and like an hour of it was over some church lights, and that went on for months. I think planning needs to have things crystal clear before they approve something. It shouldn't be coming here taking up all this time. So, and one issue, you know, when they were showing those 3 townhouses, I think it was the Chicks Beach, or, you know, it was definitely the beach area. You know, some of the fires that we've had, these places are too close together. There's been people who've died, you know, like over on Shore Drive. There's been some horrific fires over there, places that were destroyed because, you know, the firemen couldn't get in there in time. And, you know, fire is a major issue with all these high-density projects. You know, this clearly says investments. You know, it is an investment. Traffic is an issue. And I don't know what Wave Church and, you know, where his daughter goes to school, or his law firm at Town Center. I don't know what that has to do with anything. And this has been a really long night. I think there's ways that we can shorten these meetings by not having every single member speak on everything. And, you know, I'm not allowed to speak on appointments, which I have been able to do before, and I hope you'll look into that, because everyone isn't a paid employee. Thank you.
That's all the speakers, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Wood, you have a motion? Oh, wait a minute. Mr. Tower, we haven't talked to you in a couple minutes now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've really missed you. I move approval of the application with amendments to items 6, 14, and 17 to reduce the number of people who may stay overnight to 2 per bedroom and the number of rentals per week to 1.
Okay. All right, Mr. Swango, are those conditions acceptable to you?
I guess my only question that I have is, I've proven that I've complied with all the rules. I've done everything that's absolutely necessary. This wasn't a condition that was placed in the first round when I was here in June. And so I guess my question would be, what are the concerns about making it 3 people per room versus 2 when I've complied with every rule?
Yeah.
I think this is the whole problem that the other council members were talking about in the first round, is it's not right to impose a different rule on a citizen. You know, you talk about what Mr. Moss has talked about as far as individuals putting it in the hands of us, the people. And I've done everything. My daughter has done everything that we could possibly do to comply. Why you would want to take it from 2 to 3 now doesn't make any sense to me. We've heard other folks get exactly what, obviously parking is not an issue. When parking was an issue, you asked to decrease it. Now you have a house that parking is not an issue and it was complied with, and now you want it to decrease. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm caught between a rock and a hard place. Beggars can't be choosers, right? But on the same token, I've done everything I could do as a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen. Well, I just think that it's highly unfair to impose a restriction or a condition, if you will, on this particular property when there's virtually, basically no reason to do so at all. That would be, I guess that would be my position. I'm not sure, I guess if there could be some clarification on why we would need to reduce it.
Okay, Mr. Tower, could you engage Mr. Swango in conversation about your motivation for the request?
Yeah, I've announced earlier today, perhaps you didn't hear, that I've been struggling with trying to find a way to work a compromise between the neighbors who are having difficulty with the number of people and the frequency of the turnover. That is a constant complaint from when I hear from folks without regard to current pending applications, any particular one. And so I decided that I would ask council to approve these, but with the condition of those reduced. And I've done so with every single one since I made that announcement, including today's. I understand your frustration, your disappointment. Believe me, I've been very bothered by the whole idea of the inconsistency, but there have been other inconsistencies as well. And ultimately, this is a conditional use permit. It is not something that you have as a matter of right. It is entirely up to the will of council as to whether they want to approve any one of these or reject any one or approve them with conditions. So I inquire whether you're willing to accept it, but I don't intend to support it without those conditions. Personally, others may, but I will not.
As though the clarification, it doesn't apply when you move in with your family. This would be only for the short-term rentals. Is that correct, Mr. Stiles?
Sorry, can you repeat that, sir?
Yeah, in other words, you know, when Mr. Swango and his family move in, you know, the family can move in. And, you
It
know,
only applies to the property as being operated as a short-term rental.
right, okay. Yeah, Mr. Bellucci?
Well, I'll wait for a second. I have some discussion.
Okay. So, you know, Jason, that being said, you know, I think the practical course is, you know, once again, we're moving in this direction with short-term rentals, and it won't affect you once you do move in with your family. You know, just a thought.
Understand. I've said it before, I'll say it again, beggars can't be choosers. I really have an issue with 30 days away from when it was perfectly okay. and now we're being restricted, but I'll accept whatever restrictions. Obviously, I'm in this pretty heavy, and anything would be a blessing to us.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Tower, Mr. Swango would be willing to subscribe to your conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Swango. Did I make the motion? I've lost track. I think I did.
Second. Mr. Rouse made this motion.
And Mr. Rouse
You
made the
seconded
second.
motion.
Okay, any other discussion?
I do, I have some discussion.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I approach this reconsideration with an open mind. Some of the objections that I raised at the last hearing were about the driveway, the impervious surface, the impact to the neighborhood. And hearing what I heard today, and not only, I'm afraid to say that I think that my objections have been strengthened. So I have one question, though, directed to Mr. Tahan. Often, the additions to parking would be impervious. I see that a lot in the applications. Could you share any perspective about how those, when additional parking is created, do you offer a recommendation that it be impervious?
That it be pervious of some sort?
I'm sorry, pervious.
If it has not been created already, which, again, there is no limitation to create driveways that the applicant has installed on his property. If they're proposing to install it due to the short-term rental, staff does recommend a condition that they install it in either a pervious manner or some type of paver system.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just have some concerns about the parking. Those concerns remain. I have concerns about the compatibility in the neighborhood, which remain. And as well, I think there's, Mr. Wood shared a complaint about the parking itself. So it's certainly an issue in the neighborhood. So having said that, I can't support the application this evening.
Okay. Okay, okay, we're ready?
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, no, I think Jason at this point.
There's no right to talk now? My time to talk?
No, Jason, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay,
I just wasn't sure.
okay.
Are we ready for the vote?
Yes, we are.
Councilmember Abbott? Aye. Councilman, and this is to approve as amended. Councilmember Berlucci?
No.
Councilmember Henley is absent, sorry. Councilmember Jones?
No.
Councilmember Moss?
No.
Councilmember Rouse?
Aye.
Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson? Aye. Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 7-3 with Ms. Henley absent, you've approved the application as amended.
Okay, thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to appointments.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I nominate the following individuals to the Advertising Advisory Committee: Lisa Hemphill, representing the Hotel Association; to the Board of Building Code Appeals, Steve Sonkin as an alternate member; to the Development Authority, Gunther Wiesenseal; to the Social Services Board, Helena Gordine Thorpe and Nicole Thurston; to the Virginia Beach Community Development Corporation, Ryan Thumb; to the Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance, City Manager Patrick Duhaney; to the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission, City Manager Patrick Duhaney; to the Oceana Land Use Conformity Committee, City Manager Patrick Duhaney.
Another day expansion for you, Patrick.
You got time, right?
Welcome to the club.
All kinds of time.
Okay. All right, is that it?
That would be it, yes, sir.
Okay. This vote is open.
No, sir, we have to call that vote.
Oh, okay.
I have to do
Oh,
a
we
roll
gotta-
call.
It's been a very long day, and my ADHD has hijacked me.
Councilmember Abbott? Councilmember Berlucci?
Aye.
Councilmember Henley's absent. Councilmember Jones? Aye. Councilmember Moss?
Yay, but I'm not voting no on the Development Authority, not because of the candidate, because that board is not diverse enough, and our process is flawed in picking the candidates that serve on it.
Thank you. Councilmember Rouse? Aye. Councilmember Tower?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilson?
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wood?
Aye.
Mayor Dyer?
Aye.
By a vote of 10-0, you have approved the nominations as read by Vice Mayor Wood. Lost.
Okay, unfinished business, Mr.
I have one item, and in light of the hour, I will keep it brief, but I did not participate in the planning item presentation relative to Westminster Canterbury and to Thalia Development. The number of material that was provided was unprecedented and not in keeping with the regular brief. There was really no content in that brief to speak of. It was a series of pictures. I think it gave the appearance that we were giving promotional discussion of the developers, and there was no balanced view by participants. I hope that is not something that we repeat. If we have a standard set of slides for reviewing applications, that should be the same standard set of slides we use for all applications. We should not call out one set of development to get extra time by staff advocacy. It gives an appearance of favoritism, and this body cannot tolerate that kind of due process. Look at what we got from the Thalia Civic League, 3 big reports. There was no discussion of any of that. That was an unbalanced presentation, and it was a disservice to the neighborhoods.
Mr. Moss, you know, I have tremendous amount of respect to you, but I have to respectfully disagree. What we saw today, and I know you were not part of it, was in essence what I thought was a clear presentation without, I did not perceive any lobbying effort on behalf. As a matter of fact, in all honesty, it could have probably been the same. I think that they were the same pictures and things that would have been shown in the normal, presentation that, that we had. But that being said, that I think one of the reasons this is a complicated, complex thing, and there's no doubt and question of my mind that there was absolutely no staff advocacy in this regard based on the presentation, that I saw. And, the thing is, and with respect going forward, that in terms of labeling staff as, doing something, what I consider, not correct. I believe that the integrity of our planning staff and our senior management team, and, especially singling out Mr. Duhaney at this point, we have to set the tone of civility and mutual respect at this dais. And, but once again, John, you and I can talk about this offline, but, I respectfully disagree.
And that's what we're here for.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then any new business? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Voted.